Welcome to the forgotten corners of retro PC gaming, where hidden gems shine brighter than the blockbusters that buried them. Let's crack open the vault and revive the legends you never knew you missed. Realms of the Haunting was a monster of a game coming on 4 CDs. It was an insane hybrid of a first-person shooter, a full-on FMV adventure game, and a puzzle solver. You're Adam Randall, a man who inherits a haunted house, and things escalate into an apocalyptic battle between good and evil. Along the way, you uncover a tangled conspiracy of cults, demons, and ancient prophecies that stretch far beyond the walls of the house. Realms of the Haunting was released in the Quake era, and it was impossible to categorize, being a wild mix that it was. Cheesy FMV was an acquired taste too, and didn't help at its release either. But its sheer audacity is what makes it a classic. It's a massive, spooky, and surprisingly cohesive game. The mix of genuinely scary horror elements, first-person action, and B-movie FMV storytelling makes it an unforgettable relic worth experiencing even today. Fade to Black is the official sequel to the 2D cinematic masterpiece Flashback, and boy oh boy, did it have huge shoes to fill. It picks up with the original's hero Conrad Hart, who is now a prisoner of the dreaded morphs. The game ditches 2D for full, polygonal 3D action adventure, bringing the action to a modern at the time presentation level. Along the way, Conrad must escape captivity, uncover Morph's sinister plans, and fight for humanity's survival across hostile alien environments. Upon its release, Fade to Black was technologically revolutionary, as it was one of the very first full 3D action games. But it was also notoriously difficult, and its implementation of tank controls was borderline torture-like and frustrated players beyond belief. Today, it's respected as a flawed masterpiece, a crucial, ambitious step between the 2D era and the 3D revolution that would eventually evolve into Tomb Raider, made by a different dev. Its mix of cinematic storytelling, early 3D ambition, and raw difficulty has cemented it as a cult classic worth revisiting for anyone curious about the awkward but fascinating birth of modern 3D action adventures. Floor 13 is a 1991 strategy simulation game. You play as a secret director of a shadowy government agency, and your job is to make problems disappear. You read reports, dispatch teams for surveillance, disinformation, or, well, termination of unwanted and troublesome individuals, all while trying to keep the Prime Minister's approval rating high. The game's branching scenarios range from quelling protests to covering up scandals, weaving a paranoid web of conspiracies that escalate the deeper you go. Floor 13 has almost no graphics, and you just read text on static backgrounds. So yeah, I'm not saying that it was the reason it was overlooked on release, but it didn't help. The subject was a tad tough for many to wrap their heads around too, but it's exactly what makes it a unique, one-of-a-kind and worth trying out game. It's Papers, Please, just 20 years early. It's a dark, complex and cynical evil bureaucrat simulator that forces you into a fascinating and grim moral choices, some of which you would not wish on your worst enemy. Master of Magic is Civilization, but with dragons, wizards, and more magic than one should be able to contain. It's a 4X fantasy game where you build an empire, research spells, summon armies of orcs and other fantasy creatures, and conquer multiple dimensions in a turn-based strategic format. You play as a powerful wizard, fighting for dominance across the twin worlds of Arcanus and Mirror, weaving together conquest, diplomacy, and sorcery in a struggle for ultimate mastery. Master of Magic was released in a notoriously buggy state. It was an ambitious, broken mess that frustrated most players away. But once it was, well, mostly patched, its cult following realized the depth here. The sheer number of spells, heroes, races, and strategies makes it one of the most replayable and one more turn addictive 4X games ever created. Today, its legacy endures, not only through fun patches and mods that keep it alive, but also through a modern remake and re-releases that make it easier than ever to experience its unique charm. Albion, which I seem to be sticking into every video I can, is a sci-fi RPG in which we're a space pilot named Tom Driscoll sent on a corporate mission to scout what's believed to be a barren planet. But after you crash land on it, you discover that it's, well, a vibrant and alive fantasy world. Albion mixes 2D isometric exploration with 3D first-person dungeon crawling and touches on deep subjects of exploitation, equality and freedom all throughout. As you journey across the planet, you uncover the clash between advanced technology and the native cultures who fight to preserve their way of life. Albion's difficult-to-describe genre mix and its sci-fi guy on a fantasy planet plot made it a niche, hard-to-market game that went largely under everyone's radar. But it's a gorgeous, deep and unique-feeling RPG. The world building is fantastic, the story is mature, and it's the definition of a hidden gem that those who had the chance to experience adore it for its sheer heart and originality. Even today, its blend of atmosphere, music and thoughtful themes make it feel timeless rather than dated, rewarding players who seek something different from the mainstream RPGs. Z is a real-time strategy game from the Bitmap brothers. Simply put, it's red robots versus blue robots fighting over territory. But putting things simply is hardly the entire story. The game follows Commander Zod and his ragtag army of robots as they battle across a series of planets, with each mission framed by humorous cutscenes that parody military cliches and add personality to the otherwise mechanical war. In an era dominated by Command & Conquer and Warcraft, Z did something radical. There is no base building and no resource harvesting, only pure tactical real-time combat. RTS players in 1996 wanted to have a lot of choice when it came to base building, they wanted varied resources, they wanted more. Of everything really. And Z didn't deliver. It focused on pure, fast-paced territory control combat and that was too strange for most to grasp. But today it's appreciated for what it is. A brilliant, snarky and incredibly fun capture-the-flag style RTS that was years ahead of its time. Its sharp humor, distinctive art style and emphasis on quick tactical decisions over grinding resource management are exactly what give it its cult classic reputation today. Ecstatica is a 3D survival horror game that predates Resident Evil. You're a lone traveler who arrives in a village overrun by demons and you have to fight for your life. As you explore, you uncover the town has been cursed by a sorceress and your journey becomes not just about survival, but about breaking the spell and freeing the villagers. The catch? The entire game is rendered using, well, ellipsoids. Ecstatica looks like no other game ever made. Well, other than its own sequel, that is. It's a bizarre, living cartoon of spheres and ovals. Its controls are famously clunky and it was too odd and wonky for many players to take seriously at the time, despite actually being a genuinely good and at times scary. But its unique, almost avant-garde art style and truly creepy atmosphere have made it an unforgettable cult classic. It's a playable, too weird to exist surrealist nightmare.
So you do remember me getting onto the elevator.
I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is based on Harlan Ellison's horrifying short story and it's one of the darkest point-and-click adventure games ever made. Or point-and-click horror games, I should say really. A rogue AI has destroyed humanity, keeping only 5 survivors to torment them for eternity in grotesque, nightmarish scenarios that reflect their deepest traumas and moral failings. Each character's chapter forces them to confront guilt, shame and impossible choices, making the game as much as a psychological descent as it's a horror story. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream deals with themes of genocide, sexual assault and existential unending torture, and it does so in a heavy and truly terrifying way. It was never going to be a mainstream hit. The subject was too dark, the narrative too depressing and the presentation not flashy enough. But it's an incredibly rare example of a game that 100% commits to its horrifying, mature source material. It's a powerful, disturbing and unforgettable narrative experience that could easily rival some of the best written works. In 1990, the legendary designer Sid Meier, now known for Pirates and Civilization, gave us a procedural spy thriller simulator, Covert Action. You play as a CIA free agent Max Remington, hunting down masterminds across the globe, gathering clues by breaking into buildings, tapping phone lines, decoding messages, and navigating a tense top-down car pursuit. Each case unfolds like a web of conspiracies where you must piece together the hierarchy of shadowy organizations before they strike. Covert Action was a jack of all trades and master of none. It was a collection of different, at the first glance fairly average minigames that felt like it lacked the singular focus of Meyer's other hits. And while it was not a hit at launch, over the years it became a cult classic that fans love for its emergent story. No two games are ever the same and it always feels fresh. It's a spy story generator that, despite its junky parts, creates a level of paranoid procedural drama that gamers are still trying to capture today. On the surface, 1996's Strife looks like just another Doom clone, and that's exactly why it was overlooked in a market oversaturated with run-of-the-mill shooters. It was built on the Doom engine long after Quake had changed the game. But it wasn't just a shooter. It's an FPS RPG hybrid complete with a story, dialogue trees, quest hubs, and NPCs. The plot follows a resistance fighter caught in a struggle against the theocratic dictatorship known as the Order, weaving moral choices and branching paths into the action. Strife is Deus Ex before Deus Ex. FPS fans in 1996 wanted non-stop explosive action, not a story, and RPG fans wanted something like Fallout. Strife was stranded in the middle, not quite a full-fledged RPG, and definitely not just a shooter. Today we recognize it as a brilliant pioneer of story-driven, immersive first-person gaming that was years ahead of its time. Its mix of freedom, atmosphere and experimentation feels surprisingly modern, making it more relevant to today's players than it ever was in its own era. Crusader No Remorse is an isometric action game that casts you as the Silencer, a super soldier defecting from the oppressive World Economic Consortium, aka WEC. After a mission goes wrong, you join the Resistance, a rebel group fighting to topple the WEC's authoritarian grip on the society. The game unfolds through a mix of explosive missions and live-action cutscenes, giving it a cinematic flair unusual for the time. Its dystopian setting, corporate tyranny, and morally grey protagonist helped it stand out in a crowded mid-90s PC gaming landscape. In a world obsessed with first-person shooters, a unique title like Crusader was a tough sell. It was too complex and featured keyboard-only controls that were anything but ergonomic. But its interactivity, however, is legendary. You can destroy almost anything. The world is a physics sandbox of explosions, traps and chain reactions. It's a smart, tactical and incredibly satisfying action puzzle game that found its way to the hearts of gamers long after its sequel was out on the market. Fury of the Furries is an obscure gem on PC, though far less so on the Amiga. It's a French puzzle platformer that's incredibly innovative, creative, fun and also truly bizarre. You play as cute, furry creatures named Tinies who must save their species from the so-called Wicked One who kidnapped their king and enslaved their brethren. The hook is that you can switch between all four forms on the fly, each with a unique skill. One can shoot fireballs, one can swing on ropes and one can dig through terrain, and the last one can swim. And picking the right furry for the task at hand is the key to success. Fury of the Furries was well known on the Amiga, but on PC it never quite broke through the crowded market of the early 90s. Still, its clever multi-ability puzzle design, undeniable charm and steady difficulty progression made it a cult classic. And take it from me, a longtime fan of the game, that it's every bit as good as, if not better, than The Lost Vikings or any other similar game released at the time. And it's also chock full of secrets and hidden stages, discovering of which is at least half the fun. Oh man, how does one explain this one in such a short segment? Well, Moonstone A Hard Day's Night is an action RPG board game party hybrid. And yeah, you heard that right, all of them at once. Not bad, I could have confused myself into a much longer description here. Anyway, up to 4 knights compete on a quest to gather 4 keys and bring the Moonstone back to the Stonehenge by traveling a map, exploring dungeons and fighting monsters. But the combat is, well, different. It's a 2D real-time fighting game and it's unbelievably gory. I mean, just look at it. Upon its original release, Moonstone was a bit buggy, brutally difficult, and its extreme, over-the-top violence got it banned in places like Germany while raising eyebrows in the US, so it never really reached the mainstream. But that's exactly why it's adored. It's a brutal, chaotic and hilarious board game hybrid that is just as thrilling today as it was shocking back then. And especially when up to 4 of you sit at one computer clearing layers of deadly creatures, gambling in towns, fighting dragons and decapitating one another. 10 out of 10 would play again. Rise of the Triad was a first-person shooter about a special ops team infiltrating a cult-infested island. It was built on modified Wolfenstein 3D engine and its gameplay was pure, unadulterated insanity. We're talking dual-wielding pistols, hit-seeking rockets, jump pads and a power-up that literally turned you into a dog. Also enemies, dozens, hundreds, countless enemies. The story centered on stopping the Order of the Triad, a ruthless cult bent on global domination, giving the cause at least a thin narrative thread to tie it all together. In a world waiting for already announced Quake, Rise of the Triad was seen as technologically dated and just too weird for the Doom crowd. But today, that weirdness is its greatest strength. It's a chaotic, hilarious and over-the-top FPS that's all about ludicrous games and pure arcade fun. Its excess experimental mechanics and tongue-in-cheek tone make it a standout in today's retro shooter revival, appealing to players who crave personality over polish. Released in 1992, KGB is a text-heavy story-deep complex adventure game where you play a rookie KGB agent navigating the final, collapsing days of the Soviet Union. Instead of a straightforward mission, you're drawn into a tangled web of espionage, betrayal and shifting loyalties where every choice feels like it could be a trap. The plot unfolds with layers of paranoia and moral ambiguity, forcing you to question whether you're truly rooting out corruption or whether you're the one being manipulated into a larger conspiracy. KGB is unforgiving. It's based on a real-time clock, so you can and will miss appointments and important events and can even be quote-unquote removed from this plane of existence for the smallest mistake. It's a deep, realistic and paranoid spy thriller that's famous for a brutal late-game puzzle, one of the most punishing and rewarding challenges in adventure gaming. Its uncompromising design and relentless atmosphere are exactly what made KGB a cult classic, still worth playing today for those who crave a uniquely tense and cerebral adventure. Darklands is an insanely ambitious 1992 RPG. But unlike most other games in the genre taking place in the fantasy realms, it's a quote-unquote real-world RPG set in 15th century myth-filled Germany. It features creatures and monsters from local legends, alchemy, historical superstition and locales, real-time with pause combat, and a steep, vertical learning curve. The story doesn't follow a single linear plot, instead you guide a band of adventurers through quests ranging from battling robber knights to confronting demonic cults, with the overarching goal of defeating an evil itself threatening the land, Baphomet. At launch, Darklands was buggy, unforgiving and completely overwhelming to most gamers. But its ambition, scope and completely open-ended design is why it's worshipped by those who had the chance to experience it. It's one of the first truly open-world do-anything RPGs in which you can carry on playing even after completing the main goal. The dedication to its historical fantasy setting, gear, locations and monsters is unmatched, and it's adored for its sheer uncompromising depth. Oh boy, Harvester. It's a point-and-click horror adventure that puts you in the shoes of an amnesiac man in the bizarre 1950s obsessed town of Harvest. It's a surreal, digitized adventure that's part Twin Peaks, part Texas Chainsaw Massacre, part Acid Dream. The plot spirals into grotesque initiation ritual at the Sinister Lodge, forcing you to confront escalating violence, moral corruption and the game's own meta-commentary on a video game censorship. Harvester was a colossal commercial and critical failure. It was famously gory, sexual, divant and satirically offensive, but it's the king of so bad it's good cult classic point-and-clickers. It's an unhinged, fascinating what the hell were they thinking time capsule that it's genuinely one of the most bizarre and unforgettable games ever made. Today it's worth checking out not just for its shock factor, but because it's a rare artifact of the 90s gaming culture. Equal parts satire, social critique, and sheer absurdity that still sparks debate about arts, censorship, and interactive storytelling. No, not Dune 2. That's the game that blueprinted modern RTS. This Dune, released the very same year by the same publisher but a different developer. It's a gorgeous, atmospheric adventure strategy hybrid where you play as polar 3Ds, flying ornithopters, managing spies and building relationship with the Fremen. The story gradually unfolds as you rally the desert tribes against House Harkonnen, blending narrative progression with strategic resource control. Dune was sadly completely overshadowed by its RTS sibling. But while Dune 2 was a strategy game with a Dune skin, this game is the book. The ethereal music, the stunning pixel art sunsets and the slow burn adventure capture the feeling of Arrakis perfectly. It's a dreamlike, unique experience worth revisiting today. Its mix of cinematic storytelling and strategic gameplay makes it feel timeless, offering something modern players rarely get. A faithful adaptation that plays like an interactive novel. Terra Nova Strife Centauri, from Looking Glass, the geniuses behind legendary System Shock, is a tactical, squad-based first-person shooter. Set in 24th century, you play as a member of Strikeforce Centauri, defending human colonists on a distant planet from hostile bandits and mysterious enemies. You wear power armor, lead a team, and fight battles in large, open, outdoor environments. Upon its release, Terra Nova was known for having rather elevated hardware requirements, and a Pentium-class CPU was practically a must to run it comfortably. It earned a reputation as a notorious system killer, and on top of that, its slower, more tactical gameplay was too far removed from the adrenaline-filled simplicity of Quake for that crowd to ever invest much time in it. But despite all that, it's truly a lost masterpiece. It's a clear predecessor to games like Tribes and Star Siege, and its focus on squad commands, outdoor combat and large-scale tactical engagements was genuinely revolutionary. Little Big Adventure, known as Relentless Twinsen's Adventure in the US, is an isometric action-adventure. You play as Twinsen, a citizen in a world ruled by a brutal dictator who has to escape prison and embrace his destiny as a prophesized hero. Along the way, Twinsen uncovers secrets about his planet, confronts the forces of tyranny, and gradually grows into the role of a savior for his people. Little Big Adventure was a huge hit in Europe, but barely made a ripple in North America. Its quirky charm, unique art style and blend of action, puzzle and adventure elements were hard to market, but its fans are passionate. The world-building, music and whimsical yet dark story of Twinsen's journey, paired with addictive gameplay, make it an unforgettable cult classic. Over time, its scarcity in the US and the loyalty of European fans helped cement its reputation as a hidden gem that players proudly rediscover. Outlaws is a Wild West FPS from LucasArts, and in 1997 it was a hard sell. It was built on the Dark Forces engine, which was seen as technically inferior to the year prior's Quakes, and its western theme just wasn't as popular as world's second most popular sci-fi. Yup, I'm definitely claiming here that Star Trek is better. Anyway, the story follows retired lawman James Anderson, who takes up arms again after his wife is murdered and his daughter kidnapped, setting off a classic revenge tale across dusty frontier towns. If I was to summarize Outlaws in one word, it would be style. This game is gorgeous for the engine that it runs on, and it even features fully animated cutscenes that look like 90s cartoon. It has one of the best orchestral spaghetti western-inspired soundtracks in gaming history and a lore-fitting story of revenge too, rounding it up as a complete package. It was also one of the first, if not the first game, to feature a sniper rifle with a working scope. It's a cinematic, polished and totally overlooked gem. In 1994, the studio Silicon and Synapse, which would soon rebrand as Blizzard Entertainment, released Blackthorn. It's a 2D cinematic platformer where you play Kyle Blackthorne, a human raised on Earth who discovers his true heritage as the heir to the planet Tool. Shotgun in hand, he returns to reclaim his homeland from the evil warlord Sarlacc, who murdered his father and enslaved his people. The game's story unfolds across bleak alien landscapes, with Kyle battling through mines, deserts and fortresses to unite the oppressed tribes and fulfill his destiny as the future ruler of Tool. Blackthorne was essentially flashback with a shotgun, only leaner, meaner and far more focused on action. Instead of intricate puzzles, it delivered dark, gritty combat wrapped in sleek rotoscope animation that rivaled the best of its era. It pioneered the foreground-background cover mechanic in side-view platformers, letting players duck in shadows or step forward to blast enemies with brutal precision. The gameplay was laser-focused on fun, stylish shootouts rather than cerebral problem-solving. Ultimately, it was a cool, edgy title that got overshadowed by juggernauts like Doom and Warcraft, but it remains a pure slice of 90s Blizzard. Gritty, polished and unmistakably cult classic. In a genre dominated by numerous iterations of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, hardly any other game had a real chance at the slice of the pie. Well, at least not the traditional one. And One Must Fall 2097 was definitely not your run-of-the-mill versus fighter. Instead of human martial artists, the game's story revolves around the future where massive corporations sponsor brutal competitions between giant combat robots, each piloted by skilled fighters fighting for fame, fortune and survival. This corporate dystopia gave the game its distinct flavor, setting it apart from the supernatural or martial arts narratives of its contemporaries. One Must Fall 2097 is one of the best fighting games of its era. It has giant robots, customizable pilots, a killer soundtrack and a surprisingly deep single-player tournament mode where you earn money to upgrade your mech. Beyond the surface, the game offered strategic depth and variety. Each pilot altered the robot's stats and fighting style, while arenas themselves had hazards like fire pits or electrified walls that could turn the tide of the battle. This unique blend of RPG-style progression, environmental interaction and tactical customization made every fight feel different and gave PC players a reason to keep coming back long after the initial novelty wore off. Bioforge is a dark action-adventure cinematic sci-fi story. You wake up in a cell, transformed into a cyborg with no memory. As you explore, you uncover the sinister experiments of a corporation called Mondite Order, who are reshaping humans into biomechanical weapons. The story gradually reveals your past and forces you to confront both, your captors and the fragments of your lost humanity. Bioforge's tank controls were infamously clunky even for the time and made it feel more like a slow, grim puzzle solver than an action fest. But today, years later, Bioforge feels like a lost interactive sci-fi horror movie. Its commitment to its dark story, the removed memory theme, the impressive 3D model and the grim atmosphere make it a classic ahead of its time experiment. The deliberate pacing, heavy emphasis on narrative and reliance on atmosphere of a constant combat gave it a maturity that set it apart from the flashier contemporaries. In many ways, it anticipated the rise of story-driven, cinematic games that would dominate decades later. We all know XCOM now, but in 1994, believe it or not, it was not an instant hit. UFO Enemy Unknown was a bizarre mix of global strategy simulation, base and unit management, and incredibly deep, turn-based tactical squad game. It favors slow pace in both storytelling and combat, over action-packed encounters and progression, and features one of the most brutal, permadeath difficulties of the 90s. The plot unfolds through intercepted alien transmissions, recovered technology and terrifying autopsies, gradually revealing a shadow war against an extraterrestrial invasion that feels more like a slow-burn thriller rather than a typical sci-fi shootout. Enemy Unknown was a sleeper hit. It was too complex, too demanding, and too nerdy for the mainstream Doom-era audience. But, and we've learned it months or in some cases years later, it's actually a perfect game. The tension of the geoscape UFO sightings and shootouts and the horror of the battlescape encounters create emergent stories of tragedy and triumph that modern games still chase and most fail to ever achieve. Its layered systems, research trees, soldier progression, resource scarcity and the ever-present risk of losing everything gave it a depth that reward mastery and keeps players coming back decades later. It's a true legend. Forget the simple combat-centric mechanics of the first game, 1992's Star Control 2 is a massive, open-world spacefaring RPG. You're the captain of a powerful precursor vessel returning from a distant colony mission only to find Earth subjugated by the nefarious Ur-Khan. From there, you must explore the galaxy, build an alliance of bizarre alien races, and stop an ancient evil threatening all sentient life. Along the way, the game weaves a surprisingly emotional narrative about survival, freedom, and the fragile bonds between species. Star Control 2 is huge, complex and text-heavy, which was daunting for many. But it's now considered one of the greatest games of all time. The writing is top-tier, hilarious and smart, the universe is vast and full of memorable characters, and the sense of pure discovery is unmatched. It's a masterpiece adventure RPG mashup that was way ahead of its time. Its enduring cult status comes from the way it blends sharp humor with genuine cosmic drama, creating a timeless experience that still feels a bit Star Trek-y and still fresh, even today. A young actress is found murdered in an alley behind Mayfair Theatre on November 1888, and Scotland Yard's Inspector Lestrade immediately suspects another Jack the Ripper killing. Holmes, however, spots an unusual serrated scalpel at the scene and knows something far more devious is at work. So he and his trusty companion Dr. Watson set off across fog-shrouded London to unravel a darker, more intricate plot. The Lost Files of Sherlock Holmes is a point-and-click graphic adventure. You travel via evolving London map, interrogate suspects with multiple dialogue options, manage your inventory, and tackle logic puzzles using Holmes's rather sharp deductions, often with a nudge from his friend Dr. Watson. Also your observational skills, that should not go unmentioned. Although the most locations play out with MIDI music and ambient effects, the game surprises you with digitized actor speech in its intro, key cutscenes and finale. A rare multimedia treat for 1992. You play as Drake, the last survivor of Stonekeep's fallen fortress after the dark god Kulkum razes it. Guided by a spirit, or spirits, wink wink nudge nudge, you descend into the underworld to free the 9 imprisoned gods and reclaim your home from the evil forces. Stonekeep is a first-person dungeon crawler with combat, character progression and an endless corridors to explore. Its pre-rendered backdrops and live-action cutscenes deliver a cinematic flair that was practically unheard of in 1995. The in-game journal, which you first must track down, wears 3 hats: map, stat sheet and spellbook, giving the adventure an extra dash of flavor. Stonekeep was slated for a 9-month turnaround, a typical cycle at the time, but Interplay's ambition ballooned development to over 5 years, so by release it already felt a bit dated despite its polish. James Anderson, a retired US Marshal, is pulled back into action, kinda like John Wick, when a ruthless gang murders his wife and kidnaps his daughter. You see, exactly like John Wick, dog or daughter, same difference. So cue a quest for frontier justice. Outlaws is a first-person shooter drenched in western swagger. You get cinematic gunfights, atmospheric salons and canyons, and hand-drawn animated cutscenes that feel ripped from a spaghetti western. It was also one of the first shooters to include a sniper zoom scope and a realistic gun reloading mechanic, and on its highest difficulty, it even forces you into a stealth and cover tactics. Despite critical love, Outlaws was buried by the likes of Quake 2 and Unreal, making it more like a cult classic than a blockbuster. You command the seed ship Calypso, dispatched to the Beta Cayley system to establish colonies and uncover the fate of the earlier vessel, Tantalus. Strange alien ruins, hostile lifeforms and cosmic mysteries lie ahead, and you're the one who's gonna piece them all together. Alien Legacy blends real-time strategy with colony management, exploration, and research into one cohesive experience. You'll juggle food production, energy distribution, diplomatic ties, and planetary stability. But if you ignore the warning alerts for too long and let things slide, your entire colony collapses. The CD-ROM edition adds full voice acting for your advisors, giving the whole affair a surprisingly cinematic polish for a mid-90s DOS title. After Earth suffers a catastrophic science accident in 2113, its surface is left a blasted lifeless husk. Mercenaries known as the Forsaken descend into the abandoned underground complexes to loot for treasures. You're one of these scavengers cutting through crumbling tunnels and dogfighting rival looters for every last power pod. Forsaken is a true 6 degrees of freedom shooter inspired by Descent's tunnel blasting mayhem. You pilot a hoverbike through twisting 3D mazes, strafing walls, dodging traps, mowing down mechanoid sentries, and grabbing weapon and shield power-ups as you go. For its day, Forsaken was a tech showcase. It offered dynamic colored lighting, glide direct 3D support, and was even frequently bundled with 3D cards to flex those new accelerators. Yet dropping into the market alongside giants like Half-Life meant it never quite got the spotlight it deserved. You're Matt Stuyvesant, a small-time crook in 1953 London who decides to dive headfirst into organized crime. Your mission? Scope out lucrative targets, prep your gear, recruit a crack team, and pull off ever bigger heists, culminating in the ultimate score, the crown jewels. The Clue is a hybrid point-and-click adventure and heist simulator. You roam London streets and pubs gathering intel, buy cars, tools and gadgets, assign specific roles to your crew, draft the perfect plan, then hit play and watch the burglary unfold in real time. And yes, spectacular failures are entirely possible, so choose your associates wisely. Released in 1994 and known as Der Clue in German-speaking regions, it inspired a devoted cult following in Germany while remaining mostly under the radar elsewhere. Trust me, it's definitely worth a playthrough. You're gunning for the security development chief spot at Crab & Sons, and your initiation test is a doozy. Crack 35 ingenious booby-trapped safes hidden throughout an eccentric millionaire's mansion in under 12 in-game hours. Safecracker is a one-of-a-kind pure puzzle adventure game. Each save features a unique brain teaser, logic puzzles, math riddles, musical locks, even braille combinations, and you're gonna have to stretch that brain muscle of yours to beat all of them in time. Although it finally hit the shelves in 1997, Safecracker's launch was sidelined by a messy publishing squabble at GT Interactive, which pushed back its release and left its marketing basically non-existent. Set in an alternate 1976 where the 1973 oil crisis never lets up and chaos rules the Southwest, you're Groove Champion, a dirt track racer turned vigilante hunting down your sister's Jade's killer.
Let's see.
Interstate 76 is a vehicular combat ramp offering deep car tuning, weapon loadouts, engine swaps, chassis tweaks and weight balance, and 4 play modes: trip, scenarios, auto-melee and multi-melee. Missions range from escort runs to all-out road battles and anything in between. Its funky soundtrack, full of guitars and 70s grooves, is still legendary among fans, but it was sadly overshadowed by other bigger shooters. 10 students volunteer for a midnight tour of the Windelot Electrical Research Museum, but when the lights go dead, you're the only one left inside. Your goal, out with the XUP, ancient spirits trapped in cursed jars while you piece together the museum's sinister history. Shivers is a Myst-like first-person adventure with node-based navigation, inventory puzzles, and a constant sense of unease. So you know, kind of like reliving every heavy decision and cryptic conversation you survived in high school. The eerie sound design, whispers, ambient hums, sudden shrieks, made it one of Sierra's most atmospheric horror titles ever made. You hail what seems like an ordinary New York taxi, but once cabby Raul Delgado whisks you through a full station packed, the ride warps into a nightmare of flooded subways, World War I trenches, corporate wastelands, and prehistoric jungles.
Pretty cool place.
Hellcap is more of an interactive art piece than a game. You choose from directional arrows to click through FMV sequences, QuickTime video, and early 3D segments across roughly 30 handcrafted vignettes, while a solo meter tracks your dwindling lives. The action sequences you'll partake in involve sword fighting, shooting, racing, and more, and it's truly bizarre. Critics balked at its slow CD-ROM streaming and genre-blurring minigame mashup, but Hellcap's weird, artsy-fartsy style eventually won it a devoted cult following among fans of multimedia oddities. You are Enric, a knight whose beloved Maya has been kidnapped by kobolds. Your quest takes you through caverns, castles, and shadowy dungeons to rescue her, because let's be honest, nobody messes with heroes beloved or bacon. Die by the sword's mechanics were revolutionary for its time. You directly command your sword arm with mouse, slashing, stabbing, and parrying in real time. Precision mattered, turning every duel into a technical dance that still feels ahead of its era. I wouldn't say that it was as difficult as modern Souls-likes are, but it was definitely unique. It also included an arena mode for pure dueling, whether against AI monsters or another player in hot seat battles. Many fans admit that they spent more time perfecting their sword technique in the arena than advancing Enric's rescue mission. CIA Commander Snake Logan parachutes into Metro City after his plane's shot down, only to find it overrun with mutants and monsters unleashed by evil scientist Dr. Mango. Stranded in the toxic streets, you decide to clean up the infestation one mutant carcass at a time. Biomenace is a classic RPG side-scrolling run-and-gun platformer, blast enemies, rescue hostages, collect power-ups, and hunt for secret areas. The gameplay isn't reinventing the wheel, but it's well assembled, and I'll stand by calling it peak EGA. While Biomenace runs on Commander Keen's engine, which delivers butter-smooth scrolling and tight controls, it never quite climbed to the cold heights of Keen or Duke Nukem, which is odd, because I kinda like it more. In a war-torn future run by rival corporate armies, you're Sanjuro Makabe, a mobile combat armor pilot bent on avenging the deaths of your brother, best friend and girlfriend who fell on a mission against the Fallen, a ruthless terrorist cell. You've been ordered to track down Gabriel, the Fallen's new leader, but nothing's quite as simple as it first appears. Shogo Mobile Armor Division is a hybrid FPS mech adventure that flips you between Sanjuro's on-foot incursions, sneaking into enemy strongholds and blasting foes with pistols and rifles, and full-blown mobile combat armor piloting, stomping through city streets in towering mechs. That dual-scale combat was surprisingly fresh and ambitious for 1998. Shogo hit shelves in late 1998, landing just weeks before Half-Life's debut, a timing that saw its strong reviews get overshadowed by Valve's landmark shooter.
Don't just stand there. Go kill
You are John Blade, commander of Hard Cops, one of corporate sec forces policing Freeport in 2037. You're on the trail of a seductive but sinister Alexis Sinclair and her biotech megacorp, Syntech. They plan to unleash genetically engineered chaos via the mutagenic drug called U4. Sin is a Quake-to-engine-based FPS featuring branching mission paths, interactive environments and surprisingly savvy AI for its time. Enemies dive for cover, call reinforcements and react to your every move. It even pioneered area-specific damage, so you could tactically shoot off an adversary's armor leg for extra flair. Despite big ambitions, Sin shipped buggy and got overshadowed by Half-Life, which released just days later, a reoccurring theme in this video. But for those who played it, it remains a beloved cult shooter. A NATO squad is dispatched to a quarantined Polish town near Lublin, cut off after a spate of horrifying mutant experiments. As Commander Cole Sullivan, you spearhead the mission and peel back layer after layer of grotesque hybrid creatures spawned by Soviet-era research. And let me tell you, they're nothing like the stock sci-fi monsters you've faced before. Gorky 17 is a Polish tactical RPG hybrid that marries free-roaming real-time exploration with grid-based, turn-based combat. It might sound like a JRPG and kinda feels like it, but mechanically it plays closer to simplified XCOM. Exploration drips with horror ambience, the ammo is scarce, and every firefight demands ruthless strategy. Gorky 17 is gloriously unforgiving. When it crossed the Atlantic, Gorky 17 was retitled Odium in North America, a switch that combined with its unusual horror tactics mashup left many players scratching their heads and skipping it. First up, a game that sounds like a piece of office equipment, QAD. I mean, let's use it in a sentence. Hey Bob, what are you doing with that stapler? Stapler? It's not a stapler, fool, it's QAD. I have to QAD this dog before I get it to Michael. See? Office equipment. Anyway, our today's QAD is also a 1996 shooter that on the surface looks like a normal fly around and shoot stuff game in a 3D sci-fi inspired landscape. So you're a bounty hunter, and you zip around in a ship trying to rescue civilians by stuffing them into transport pods, which you first have to snag from a factory, all while shooting any and all aliens bent on capturing them hostage too. Simple, right? I wish that was all. Because QAD is also a frantic, unhinged deathmatch against rival bounty hunters. The bizarre part is that the easiest way to win is to just blow up your opponent's rescue pods, civilians and all, so you end up with at least 75% of the hostages. It's a humanitarian mission that actively encourages war crimes. It's pure chaotic voxel-based nonsense, and despite all that, it's a blast.
Pod has been dropped. Docked with pod.
If you thought that your family was weird, you haven't met the Crotonies. They are, well, something else. In Armed Delirious, also known as Dementia or Granny, you play as a, well, delirious grandmother. It's a point-and-click adventure game, but it feels more like a point-and-screaming confusion. Your animal-abusing family has been kidnapped by the Great Rabbit, yeah, you heard that right, a mighty defender of animals across the universe, who also swiped your precious cookbook and locked both it and your family away in bizarre worlds of his creation. Your mission is rather simple. Get your family and your recipes back, armed only with your wits and a flying washing machine that needs fixing first. Armed and Delirious runs on a logic system best described as logically illogical. Kinda like that statement. Your inventory is stored in Granny's bra, or braventory to be precise, and the puzzles are so nonsensical that trying to apply reason only makes them harder, and the click on everything and hope for the best approach feels like the most rational strategy. All in all, it's a Monty Python-esque fever dream of a game, one that can cause more headache than fun, unless you're the kind of a player who thrives on chaos.
Wait for your turn.
This one is a deep cut. Helios, a 1993 DOS game, is one of those titles you'd find in a shareware bin and wonder if it was a game or a virus. Note it down because most of the time it's actually a virus, or malware, either or. In this particular case, however, believe it or not, it happens to be a game. At its core, Helios is an arcade-style puzzler. You pilot a fragile little balloon and, well, try not to pop it. Movement bleeds air, so you're constantly balancing survival against deflation. Collect stuff, dodge pins, rain turrets, you know, the usual suspects. Survive and progress. Now, why is Helios bizarre? I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? It's the graphics. This game is a visual assault. It's a mess of clashing colors, strange sprites and layouts that just get weirder and weirder. It feels less like a game and more like a programmer's kid kindergarten art project that they decided to digitize for posterity. It's weirdly hypnotic, headache-inducing, and you're never quite sure what you're looking at or what you're supposed to be doing. Imagine Mad Max remade by an alien race that only communicates through interpretative dance. That's Vengers. Also, what's more bizarre than that? What? Oh, and don't get hung up on that dancing idea. Vengers is a vehicular action-adventure with RPG vibes. At least, that's how I think about it. But it's really difficult to explain in words. Perhaps it could be easier with that aforementioned artistic dancing. Anyway, you're a Venger driving mechos, so basically a bug car, across looping ring-shaped worlds. You trade, you fight, you collect beeps, tiny bug creatures that double as currency, and you try to gain favor with alien BIOS societies. The entire vibe of Vengers is just off, but in the best way. You're not saving the world, you're just trying to get by. To progress with one alien faction, you have to participate in the rituals, which might mean holding some glowing phlegma to a sacred slime pit or whatnot, while rival Vengers try to kill you. It's an entire universe of pure unadulterated what the heck is happening, and it's surprisingly captivating. Here it is, the big one, the one you've all been waiting for. Or to be more precise, the one I've been waiting for to mention and couldn't find the right video to fit it in. Bad Mojo. Bad Mojo is a photorealistic adventure game where you play as Roger Sams, a cynical entomologist who's planning to embezzle money from a research grant to escape his miserable life. It's a rather interesting idea. But then, as he's about to do that, his mother's enchanted locket unleashes a curse that transforms him into a, well, cockroach. Karma, it seems, always finds a way. You're a cockroach? I mean, of course you're not, you're an outstanding fellow or a gal, but in the game you are. And for its entirety. Also I said fellow and gal, what am I, 90? Anyway, you navigate a filthy, rundown bar from a roach's eye view. Puzzles involve things like pushing a cigarette butt, using dead roaches to cross a sticky roach trap, or accidentally gassing an entire building. It's disgusting, it's brilliant, and it has a surprisingly complex plot about family reconciliation. And trust you me, you've never been so stressed out by a cat. Appropriately named Franz in a nod to Kafka. In the 90s, everyone was doing dystopia. But only Normality did it this awkwardly and not normal at all. Normality is a fully 3D graphic adventure with that chunky action figure look that screams mid-90s. You play as Kent Natson, a rebellious slacker in the city of Nutropolis where fun is literally illegal. And how serious is the law, you may wonder? Let's just say that the game starts you with getting arrested for whistling a merry tune. Sucks, doesn't it? The whole game runs on the 90s wacky energy. It's not the dark, gritty dystopia you'd expect, it's a goofy one. The humor is relentless, the character models are stiff, and the whole thing feels like a Saturday morning cartoon that accidentally wandered into politics. It's worth seeing just to experience its very specific, very strange, long-forgotten 90s vibe. This isn't just a game, it's an art piece. From the avant-garde eyeball-wearing band, The Residents, this is Bad Day on the Midway. You start as a 10-year-old boy named Timmy at a failing roadside carnival. But here's the hook. You can at any time click on another character and jump directly into their head, taking over their body and seeing their story. If that's not like the weirdest, most bizarre and in an odd way cerebral story you've played all week, I don't know what is. Also, you had a pretty funky week. The goal is, well, not to die, and you wander the midway, uncovering characters' backstories, each one visualized by different artists, and try to avoid being murdered by a serial killer who quote-unquote liberates people he deems ugly by transforming them into butterflies. Oh, and yeah, there's a plague-carrying rat running around, if that all wasn't enough. It's terrifying, beautiful, and makes absolutely zero sense. So you know, a perfect fit for our video. If you ever had a friend who was really into the History Channel, to the point of staying up late and watching it until 2, 3, 4 AM, maybe 5, this is the game they would make if they could. Drowned God Conspiracy of the Ages is a Myst-style adventure game, but instead of wandering a serene island, you drop straight into the middle of an X-Files episode. Well, not literally, but it sure feels like it. The entire game is a massive conspiracy theory dump. It's built on the premise that aliens genetically engineered humanity and have been pulling the strings behind everything. The Knights Templar, Atlantis, the JFK assassination, you name it. Any plausible or implausible scenario, they're the ones responsible. The game is a surreal, psychedelic and honestly kinda creepy journey through every fringe theory, all presented as if it were 100% fact. It's based on a forged manuscript by designer Harry Horse, which claimed to reveal hidden truths of history, and that origin only adds to its mystique. Drowned God is the ultimate 90s the truth is out there artifact, and for that alone, it's worth experiencing. What happens when you let an industrial metal band's album cover artist design a first-person shooter? You get ZPC, aka Zero Population Count. ZPC is a mid-90s FPS running on the Marathon 2 engine. Yeah, the very same famous Mac FPS tech. So what do you do in ZPC? You run, you gun, you find keys, you know, standard stuff you do in Doom, Quake or, well, Marathon. The difference is that you're sort of a god king, roused from suspended animation to deal with an evil sect that's taken over the planet and is slaughtering your followers. The weirdest thing about it is definitely the art style. Every texture, every enemy and every wall is designed by Aidan Hughes, the guy behind those iconic KMFDM album covers. And no, sadly I don't know them, it's all just research folks. Anyway, the entire game looks like a living, breathing Soviet-era propaganda poster. It's all harsh angles, stark reds and blacks and brutalist architecture. ZPC is probably the most industrial-feeling game ever made.
Better not. Who knows what could be.
And finally a game that proves 90s Germany was a weird place. Good weird, to be clear, not dangerous or sus weird. Chewie, Escape from F5.
Uh-oh, there's someone coming, and I sense the
Chewie is a bright, colorful cartoon point-and-click adventure very much in the Day of the Tentacle style. You play as pink one-eyed alien named Chewie, chasing down your buddy Clint after he crash lands on Earth with the stolen red glam, a powerful artifact that the evil Brocks are desperate to get back. Plenty of weird names, I know, just remember it's a point-and-clicker and just go with it. So why is Chewie odd, you may wonder? Well, it's just pure uncut zany. You'll be ghost hunting, shooting slime balls and getting shrunk, and that's just the start of it all. The puzzles aren't exactly brainbusters, so the game is really a delivery system for the relentless wacky humor. Chewie may not be the most eyebrow-raising game out there, but it's odd in the most wholesome and family-friendly way you could imagine. It's definitely worth a playthrough.
My fire, it's burning again.
In 1996, we got a truly special game that somehow went by without much fanfare, Archimedean Dynasty. Think Wing Commander, but underwater and way darker. Equally as fun though, and technically more of a submarine simulation with tactical combat than a straight-up shooter. The world's surface is uninhabitable due to a devastating nuclear war, so humanity survives in the oceans. You play Emerald Deadeye Flint, a mercenary submarine pilot navigating political tensions between underwater factions. The story is surprisingly deep, and yes, the pun is intended, dealing with scarce resources, corruption, and ancient secrets buried in the aqua. Archimedean Dynasty's atmosphere is unmatched. The feeling of piloting a heavy submarine through murky green water while sonar pings around you is nearly as intense as in those Aliens vs Predator sessions. And while it was the first entry in what later became the Aquanox series, many fans argue that this original game had the best story and the most tactical combat. While movie or TV show tie-ins are rarely great, or even decent if you think about it, Raven Software's Star Trek Voyager Elite Force was actually quite good. In fact, it had no business being as good as it was. Built on the Quake-3 Arena engine, it not only looked and ran fantastic for the time, but also delivered shooting mechanics that were incredibly crisp. I mean, just look at it. Boom boom, kapow pow pow! I really hope I remembered to pick the right footage for this section here, cause otherwise, oh my god, cringe. You play as Ensign Alex Monroe, second in command of the Hazard team, basically the SWAT equivalent team for the USS Voyager. The plot is surprisingly solid. Voyager gets stuck in a graveyard for ships, trapped by a mysterious station known as the Forge. Along the way as the story progresses, you'll fight the Borg, Species 8472, Klingons, and even Hydrogen to free the ship and escape the cursed region of space. Voyager Elite Force is arguably the first Star Trek game that actually nailed the feeling of a frantic phaser fight you saw on the TV screen. It's fast, it's polished, and walking around the perfectly recreated Voyager, complete with the actual cast voices, is still a total vibe and a pleasure to any and all fans of the series. You know, nerds such as myself, loving most of the Star Trek series, even those that the mainstream ignored. Next up we have Claw, released in 1997 by Monolith Productions. The same Monolith that also made Blood in 1997 and later became famous for Fear. But before they became the masters of first-person horror shootouts, they made a rather great game about the pirate cat. And who doesn't like the idea of a pirate cat? You play as Captain Nathaniel J. Claw, an anthropomorphic cat who escapes the dungeons of La Roca after discovering a letter pointing to the legendary Amulet of 9 Lives, a mystical artifact said to grant near immortality if all of its gems are assembled. He's a cat pirate by day and pussy breaker by night. Oh my god, yeah, I heard that. Please don't seek any second meanings here, I meant pussy heartbreaker. In fact, scratch that pussy altogether. Oh Jesus, I'm only making it worse. Anyway, it's a classic 2D side-scrolling platform, but it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, look at it. The hand-drawn art style looks like a Saturday morning cartoon. Now, don't let the cute graphics fool you, Claw is pretty brutal. It's infamous for its crushing difficulty and stingy saves points. But when you finally nail a level, you know, when you complete it perfectly, you feel like a true pirate cat god. The sword-fighting, pistol blast, dynamite tosses and that magical claw ability keep the gameplay loop fresh all the way through. Let's rewind a little now, back to the golden DOS year of 1991. Sierra Online was the joint king of adventure games along with LucasArts, but they also had an educational game that didn't feel like boring as homework. I'm talking about The Castle of Dr. Brain. Honestly, it still sounds like a pretty cool James Bond movie title. You play as a wannabe lab assistant, trying to get a job with the eccentric Dr. Brain, but to enter his castle, you have to solve a gauntlet of logic puzzles scattered throughout its rooms and corridors to prove your skill and worth. So you'll be decrypting ciphers, navigating mazes and solving memory games among others. The Castle of Dr. Brain is pure dopamine for puzzle lovers. Unlike a lot of cursed edutainment games from the 90s that treat you like a baby, Dr. Brain actually respects your intelligence. The pixel art is charming, the music is catchy, and honestly, the Tower of Hanoi puzzle is still stressful 30 years later. Okay, we're getting a little obscure here. Let's talk about Rebel Runner Operation Digital Code from 1996. It's one of those games you probably never saw on the shelf when it released and either found it accidentally in a bargain bin or on a shareware disk, if you even did at all. Rebel Runner is an action platformer that tried to use those Donkey Kong Country-style pre-rendered 3D graphics idea only on PC. Personally, I hate the formula, with a passion of a fingerless sharpshooter, but you may disagree and find it quite enchanting. You play as the rebel soldier trying to save your planet Branax from the evil aliens of Maroon Empire, and for some reason your main weapon is shooting fireballs from your own hands. Yep, that's big game logic of 1990s. Look, I'll be real, Rebel Runner has a bit of that Eurojunk charm to it. It's not a bad game, mind you, just feels a bit, well, cheap. It's also incredibly difficult and the controls take some getting used to. But on the plus side, it's a fascinating time capsule of that mid-90s era where everyone was trying to figure out what 3D should look like. It's frantic, fast and weirdly addictive once you get the hang of it. And now for something completely different. Although so far everything's been different from one another, so it's a kind of a mood statement. Anyway, The Sting is a follow-up to The Clue we've covered a few videos ago, and also a burglary simulator that plays like nothing else. Well, nothing other than The Clue itself. You play as Matt Tucker, a career criminal just out of jail in the city of Fortune Hills. And instead of finding a boring sales or office job, you jump straight back into what you know best, thievery. The gameplay loop is split into 3 parts. First, you scout the location to see what's inside, then comes the planning phase where you walk around post-time and tell your characters exactly what to do, unlock this window, grab this loot, set up an escape route and whatnot, and finally you hit play and watch the heist unfold in real time to see if you messed up. The most fun is naturally in watching those burglaries succeed after a careful prep. The Sting feels like an odd mixture between early 2000s home video editor and Ocean's 11. Only you're not as good looking as Ocean and don't always succeed. But watching a plan come together perfectly after you spend some time on it is incredibly satisfying. It's quirky, colorful, and the recording mechanic where you script actions and then replay them was way ahead of its time. Plus the soundtrack is a low-key banger. Jazzy and playful, something you'd not expect from a game like that. Sometimes you don't need a story. Just a bag of cash and a lot of time. But if that's unavailable, a paddle, a ball and a countless hell-addicting levels will do just fine. Released in 1996, the X-Ball was the freeware king of breakout clones born from the Amiga classic Mega Ball. Sure, some folks swear its 1998 sequel had more polish with multiplayer and fancy textures, but it's not here to defend itself, so I'm sticking by what I said. The X-Ball was a freeware staple on countless family PCs. Well, at least where I lived. It took the classic infinitely addictive Arkanoid formula and injected it with techno speed, then sprinkled tons upon tons of pickups for good measure. You've got sticky puddles, fireball power-ups and those terrifying shrink puddle skulls you had to dodge at all cost. 50 levels of pure brick busting bliss, plus a hidden level editor if you knew the right key combo. The physics in the X-Ball are pure perfection. The sound of the ball hitting the bricks, that crisp clack 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 and then boom, I swear, it's like ASMR for 90s kids. Best part about it, it was solo spec, it could run on practically anything. Your potato PC, your toaster, maybe even your girlfriend's pregnancy test, anything. The X-Ball is hypnotic, and it still has that just one more level energy that modern mobile games wish they did. Not all games evolved from something that came earlier, and some of them innovated on their own. Shadowcaster from 1993, even if often forgotten, was one of those games. It stood as a bridge between Wolfenstein 3D and Doom with a touch of magic. A first-person action adventure with role-playing elements running on a pre-Doom engine that dared to add fog, swimming and even flight. It was developed by Raven Software using a modified id engine. You play Kurt, who discovers he's the last of a race of shapeshifters. So as it's easy to guess, you can morph into different forms. Like a four-armed cat who can see the unseen, a sprite who squeezes into tight spaces and unleashes swarms, a flying fire-breathing dragon, and more. The catch is that evil god Malkor's corrupted shapeshifters are hunting you just as you're learning to master these powers. The shapeshifting mechanic wasn't just a gimmick, it was a tool for environmental puzzling. You often had to swap forms to progress, and while the implementation feels clunky today, seeing how Raven pulled off flying, swimming and even foggy outdoor vistas in a Freedom engine is borderline mind-blowing. Okay, things are about to get weird. Only a little, but they are, so brace yourselves, because Cocktail Visions Inca feels like a fever dream of a game. It mixes space combat flight simulation with adventure puzzles, maze shooting and Inca mythology, I wanna say. You play as El Dorado, the new Sapa Inca who has to fight Spanish conquistadors. In space. Yeah, you heard that right, in space. It features digitalized cutscenes, later expanded even more in the CD-ROM version, golden Inca-inspired spaceships and mashup of ancient and futuristic locales and a soundtrack that swings from pan flutes to full orchestral tracks. Inca is an aesthetic overload. It's so uniquely bizarre and colorful that you can't look away, even if sometimes you're unsure what you're looking at. The flight combat is actually pretty decent arcade fun, but you really play it for the surreal experience of fighting space conquistadors while blasting Indian folk-inspired music. In 1997 we got a fantastic genre mashup that was way ahead of the curve. Uprising, Join or Die. This is half first-person shooter, half real-time strategy and full-on fun.
Satellite view.
In Uprising, you pilot a super tank called the Wraith. You drive around the battlefield blowing stuff up, but you can also instantly drop into top-down view to build bases, factories and teleport rebel units directly into the fight. You know, in an RTS format. You're not just the commander in Uprising though, you're also the hero unit on the field, turning the tide of battle on numerous occasions. The plot has you leading a rebellion against a ruthless military empire, blending personal combat with strategic command. Uprising hybrid style is still very rare. The feeling of ordering a squad of tanks to attack a base and then driving alongside them to blow open the gates yourself makes you feel powerful in a way standard RTS games don't. Gates of Skeldad from 1998 is a true hidden gem, especially if you aren't from Central Europe. It's a Czech dungeon crawler released for DOS, later ported to Windows, and a game most people never even heard of. It's a classic grid-based fare similar to Lands of Lore or Eye of the Beholder. You create a party of adventurers to stop 5 renegade mages who built a tower to summon evil dimensions. Sounds ridiculous, I know, but trust me, it's a good game. The story unfolds on the mythical island of Rovenland, a land once blessed by the Elder Gods, now threatened by the imbalance these mages bring. It may sound like a standard fantasy stuff, but the execution is brilliant. Gates of Skeldad was made with a lot of love and virtually no budget, yet it plays beautifully. The turn-based combat is tactical, the puzzles are clever, and thanks to the fun translations, the English-speaking world can finally enjoy what is considered a gem and a cult classic in the Czech Republic. And finally, we're closing today's video with a pure adrenaline shot delivered by showers of bullets, 1997's Demon Star. If you remember the shareware era and were an active gamer, testing each and every release, then chances are you had this installed on your hard disk at some point too. Demon Star is a vertically scrolling shooter, a shmup if you will, clearly inspired by the arcade classic Raiden. So you know, it's a standard game flow. You fly a ship, you grab power-ups that change weapons, spread your laser across the whole screen, and you blow up giant mechanical space bosses. Pure arcade DNA. Demon Star strips away all the unnecessary complexity of modern games, focusing on what's important: gameplay. It's just you, the music, and a million bullets to dodge. Also enemies, many enemies. The controls are razor sharp, and the thrill of turning your ship into a screen-clearing wall of death is incredibly satisfying. 10 out of 10 would play again. We're starting fast with abuse. Not domestic violence, mind you, don't worry, the channel's not changing in that direction, it's Abuse the Game. And it's an abuse in most of our gaming experiences that it was such an overlooked title as it deserved much more. Released in 1996, it looks like your standard side-scrolling run-and-gun platformer but plays like a dream. You control Nick Vrenna, a prisoner wrongly accused and trapped in a high-tech facility where illegal genetic experiments have gone horribly wrong, unleashing mutants across the prison. And given the rather shitty turn of affairs, you decide to evacuate the premises and pronto. Which, you know, mostly involves turning everything that moves into a fine red mist. So why is Abuse special? Because it revolutionized the controls. It was one of the very first, if not the first platformer to master the WASD plus mouse setup, so move with the keyboard but aim 360 degrees with the mouse. It made combat feel incredibly fast and precise, and most importantly, hella satisfying. It also featured dynamic lighting effects that created eerie shadows and atmosphere. It's frantic, it's dark, and the source code was released into the public domain in 1997, so it's basically the people's champion of shooters.
What is a real man dream?
Let's slow it down and put a monocle for the Gene Machine. Or let's not, as it's not 1960, but we should definitely check the game out. This 1996 point-and-click adventure is what happens when H.G. Wells and Monty Python decide to write the game together. You play a Spears Featherstone Hoe, actually pronounced Fonshow, because English is truly a magnificent language. A pompous gentleman explorer accompanied by his manservant, Mossop, trying to stop Dr. Lindsay, a villainous scientist who is splicing humans with animals to create a super race. Along the way, you're recruited by a talking cat and whisked across exotic Victorian Illa Localis in a farcical globe-trotting adventure. The Gene Machine is worth playing today because it's genuinely charming without being frustrating, which is not something that can be said about all classic point-and-clickers, and especially those that tend to utilize pixel hunting mechanics. Anyway, the puzzles are logical, the voice acting is delightfully over the top, and the art style is this vibrant, colorful take on Victorian steampunk before everything in the genre became brown and rusty. If you miss the era of adventure games that focused on comedy rather than moon logic puzzles, this is a cozy weekend play and a fun memory to make.
Special contaminant is a dead sheep's carcass.
Okay, enough talking. You know, the excessive blah 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 never did anyone any good, let's blow something up. Recall, released in 1999, is the ultimate power fantasy. You pilot the Battle Force tank, BFT, but this isn't a slow simulation. It's an arcade-style, vehicular combat shooter where your tank gains modular upgrades and weapons and lets you fight across land, water and even limited air environments. You are dropped into missions to fight the machines in a megacorp-controlled dystopia where Earth has been overrun by sentient machines. You know, a Terminator-style kind of an event. But honestly, the plot is just an excuse to flatten everything. Not that you should care. Recall was developed by Zipper Interactive using the same engine they built for MechWarrior 3, which means that the mayhem and destruction you get to cause are truly glorious. You can run over fences, crush trees and level buildings, and it's pure, distilled dopamine delivered by huge explosions and flying debris. There is no crafting, no skill trees or convoluted progression, just you and a cannon the size of a minivan. It's the perfect game for when you have a bad day at work and want to let some steam off. Let's look at something a bit moodier. Synergist is a 1996 MS-DOS point-and-click adventure that feels like a Lost Blade Runner spin-off. You play Tim Machine, a coincidence of a name, and a journalist in the corrupt city of New Arus, and you're investigating a murder that pulls you into a conspiracy involving crime, corruption, and a mysterious humanitarian figure named Victor Ambrose. The city, once prosperous, has now collapsed into chaos and decay, and Tim's investigation drags him deeper into its sinister underbelly. It uses that classic, mid-90s style of digitized actors placed over pre-rendered backgrounds that you either love or hate. Here's a fun fact. Synergist was the debut game from Vicarious Visions, yeah, the very same studio that eventually made the Tony Hawk remakes and worked on Diablo 2 Resurrected. And even back then, you could see their ambition and craft. The acting in Synergist is, well, let's call it enthusiastic, or better yet, cringe-tastic. So you know, so bad that it's ironically good. But the soundtrack, mixing jazz fusion with moody synths and the oppressive, rainy atmosphere, are top tier and add a lot to the atmosphere. It's a captivating noir mystery that sadly got buried under the inevitable 3D revolution, and because it was only released in Europe, it never reached a wider audience. Speaking of weird and clunky 90s tech, let's talk about The Hive. Released in 1995, this is a rail shooter that was basically the poster child for Windows 95 gaming. Well, at least to odd 7 people who knew about it ever existing. You play Mel, an agent fighting against the Noirdyne Corporation and their plot to weaponize insect aliens. The game is almost entirely pre-rendered CGI, meaning you don't control the flight path, just the crosshair. Is The Hive a long-lost masterpiece of gaming? What do you think? Of course it's not, but you can bet your sweet ass that it's a blast. It sits in that so bad it's good category with its B-movie plot and cheesy voice acting. But it's also a fascinating time capsule of the era when developers thought full-motion video was the future and were even willing to bank everything on it. The difficulty spikes are brutal, making it feel a bit uneven, but the spectacle of flying through explosive alien hives and blasting them to pieces is still weirdly satisfying. The next game in today's video hails from Poland, and it's Galador the Prince and the Coward. It's a stunning point-and-click adventure game released in 1998 to sadly very little fanfare. The premise is quite hilarious. You play a young boy from our world who is a total coward. To combat his crippling cowardice, he makes a deal with the devil, who promptly transfers his soul into the body of Prince Galador during a duel with a Black Knight. But of course, it all goes wrong and he spends the game as his cowardly old self, stuck in a hero's body, while trying to wiggle his way out of a multitude of dangerous situations. For years, Galador was a hidden gem because it wasn't widely available in English, but thanks to a fan translation, released in 2020 and an official GOG release in 2021, all of you can finally enjoy it. The writing is sharp, dry and full of that specific Eastern/Central Eastern European wit that mocks fantasy tropes. In short, if you think my sense of humor is fun, you'll like it. If you don't, then, well, you know, carry on to the next game in our list. Oh, but it's worth mentioning that the hand-painted art is gorgeous, looking like a storybook came to life. If you loved Monkey Island but are ready for non-pirate team jokes, this one's worth a playthrough. Back to the shooters. In Extremis from 1993 is what happens when you want to make an alien game but don't have the license. You crash land on a derelict ship and you have to fight your way through corridors of xenomorph, sorry, I meant to say legally distinct aliens. The gameplay revolves around collecting keycards to access weapons, equipment and elevators, all while managing oxygen and batteries to survive. It runs on a souped-up Wolfenstein-style engine and it's a claustrophobic, difficult and surprisingly fun game. It's still limited by its 90-degree angled walls and heavy on mazes, but it doesn't get in the way too much. Here's a massive curiosity. In Extremis is often credited as one of the very first FPS games to feature automatic doors. I know, it sounds silly today, I mean, they're pretty much nothing special, either in games or reality, but not having to press that spacebar to open a door was a cutting-edge tech in 1993. On the flip side, it doesn't have a save system, so you have to use passwords, which makes it a brutal challenge as you don't get them very often, but for FPS historians, it's a crucial missing link between Wolfenstein and Doom. Let's get weird with the L-Zone, and now it's not a title of an adult-themed movie. It released in 1993 and it feels more like a vibe than a game. You know, artsy-fartsy stuff. It was created by the Japanese multimedia artist Haruhiko Shono, and it's an interactive exploration of a deserted, automated, doomed city. You just wander through this high-tech dome, pushing buttons and pulling levers to see what the machinery does while trying to escape to the so-called Green Planet. It's not an entirely peaceful exploration though, as there are traps and dangerous robots, so keep that in mind. L-Zone is the ultimate vaporware experience, though technically it predates the aesthetic by decades. You play it, you forget about it, and you never come back to it. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying you'll never feel the need to go through it again. The pre-rendered visuals and the cold mechanical sound design create an atmosphere that feels like a lonely dream. It's a digital art gallery from the future that never happened. If you want to turn off the lights, put on headphones and just exist in a strange digital space for a couple of hours, then L-Zone may be the experience that you're after. I know what you're in the mood for now, a very unusual genre mashup. Silverlode is a horror adventure set in the Wild West, wait for it, populated by vampires. You play a bounty hunter who arrives in a cursed town to save the kidnapped child only to realize that the locals are thirsty for blood. The town's decline stems from a silver mine built on a sacred Native American land which unleashed the supernatural horrors. It's a weird mix of first-person point-and-click exploration with occasional shooting gallery sequences that may have not aged great, but is still a cool curiosity to witness. While the Silverlode got a PS1 port that people remember more fondly, mostly for the better voice acting, the PC original has a gritty, sharp pixel art style that really sells the horror. The atmosphere is thick enough to chew on, so you know, dusty, gothic and unsettling, and the setting surprisingly does not get in the way. We very rarely get Weird West games, so seeing one from the mid-90s that actually leans into the horror is a treat. It's clunky, sure, but it uses character and style. Cybermage Darklight Awakening comes from Origin Systems and it was way ahead of its time. You play a nameless hero who dies saving a stranger only to be resurrected in a cyberpunk lab with a crystal in his forehead that controls the dark light. Set in the year 2044, the world is ruled by ruthless corporations and your powers put you right in the middle of their war with rebel factions. It's an immersive sim before the term really existed, blending FPS action with RPG stats and magic. Get this, in 1995, this game let you drive tanks and pilot hovercars in a semi-open city. Who would have thought it possible? It's ambitious, complex, and yes, the controls are a bit of a finger twister today, but you can clearly see the DNA of Deus Ex forming right here. If you love deep complex shooters, and if strife we've spoken about in one of the recent videos isn't enough for you, then Cybermage is absolutely worth your time. We just can't do this list without the Journeyman project, specifically the turbo remake of the original 1993 game optimized to run faster at a playable framerate. It features no Hadoukens or Shoryukens though, so sadly it's not the turbo most of us think when hearing it, but it's a pretty good game. You're an Agent 5 of the Temporal Security Annex, jumping back in time to stop saboteurs from altering history. Along the way you'll visit eras as far back as 2 million BC, thwart a nuclear missile launch in 2112, and even prevent the assassination in 2310, all while trying to preserve humanity's chance at joining an alien alliance. It is a first-person puzzle game that is heavily on lore and world building. The interface is the star here. The game uses a biochip system where you had changes based on the chips you have installed, which is hella cool when you think about it. The pacing is deliberate and slow, but the mystery is fantastic and you love digging deeper and deeper to the very center of it. It feels like playing through a high-budget sci-fi novel in which your decisions actually matter. Next we have a game that at one point some called Poor Man's Quake, but that's totally unfair. Chasm the Rift, released in October 1997 on DOS, is a Ukrainian-developed shooter where you fight time strikers across different eras: present day, ancient Egypt and Middle Ages, and even the distant future. They've occupied the nuclear power plant, harvesting the energy to create ruptures in time and invade Earth through them. The invasion unfolds across multiple periods you travel through. On the surface, it may look like just another blocky shooter, but it's actually rather good. Despite being overlooked by most gamers, Chasm did something unique that Quake didn't: dismemberment. You can shoot off an enemy's arm and they'll keep attacking, shoot off their legs and they'll crawl after you. It may not be the new mechanic today, but for 1997 this was mind-blowing tech. It adds a tactical layer where you have to literally disarm your opponents, pun intended. The bosses are also memorable, especially because some demand strategy beyond raw power. In many ways, Kazmo was a technical marvel. And finally, we end with one that hurts the most, Anachronox. It technically released in 2001, so a bit outside of the scope of this video, but I wanted to cover it and found no other video I could stick it in. Also, it was developed throughout the late 90s, so if we stretch the definition of a 90s game, it kinda sorta fits. Anachronox is a western take on a JRPG. You play Sylvester Slyboots Bukeli, a washed-up detective in a cyberpunk slum on the decaying planet Anachronox. Soon, he stumbles into a mystery that escalates into an interplanetary adventure threatening the fate of the universe. It plays a little bit like JRPG inspired by Final Fantasy, with turn-based battles and a massive story. The reason you play Anachronox is the comedy. It is genuinely one of the funniest games ever made. You don't just recruit soldiers, the characters you can have in your party even include a grumpy, shrinking planet named Democritus. Yeah, an entire planet floats next to your head in battle. The game ends on a cliffhanger that was never resolved, which is kinda tragic, but the journey is so full of heart, humor and adventure that it's absolutely worth the heartbreak. I think it's only appropriate to kick things off with the grandfather of rage quitting until 3 AM, Action Supercross. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I dare you, play it. And then let me know in the comments at what hour you gave up. Anyway, this is a physics-based motorbike platformer where the goal is deceptively simple. Collect all the apples and then get to the flower to win. Sounds stupid, I know, but hardly anything is as addictive. You control a bike with suspension made of pure jelly and a driver with a death wish, navigating loops, jagged spikes and gravity-defying jumps. There are 47 levels in total and you're allowed to skip up to 5 if you get stuck. So why would you want to play Action Supercross today? Because this is the direct precursor to the cult classic Elastomania, and it perfected the just one more try addiction loop before the term even existed. The physics are floaty, weird and absolutely mesmerizing once you master some of the more daring maneuvers. Fun fact, the game's community has preserved old world record tables and replays, with fans still competing for milliseconds decades later. It is the definition of easy to learn, impossible to master, and you love it. If you liked Archon in the 80s but thought, I wish this was darker, bloodier and had cooler traps, you need to try Dark Legions. Released by SSI in 1994, this is a fantasy strategy game where you buy an army of units, from orcs to trolls to shapeshifters and undead, and maneuver them on a grid, you know, like in Archon. And when two units meet, the game zooms in for a real-time combat with terrain obstacles. Yes, also like Archon. The story is basically non-existent, just a clash between the two fantasy armies, but let's be honest here, does a game like that really need one? Dark Legion stands out because of the sheer variety of unit abilities. It's not just hit with a sword or shoot projectile kind of a game, because some units can teleport, some can turn into stone statues to heal, and the orb holder mechanic adds a capture the flag layer to the deathmatch. Players can also buy traps and rings to upgrade units at the start, adding extra tactical depth. It's surprisingly balanced and competitive. If you have a friend who thinks they're good at strategy games, challenge them to this and watch them panic when your invisible wraith backstabs their wizard in a game where strategy is as important as agility. Who am I kidding? We're talking about old games here, we don't have friends. Next we have Spycraft the Great Game, which pretty much says it all with its title. It's about spies, and it's great. It isn't your typical point-and-click adventure though, it was Activision's attempt to make the ultimate realistic spy thriller. You play as CIA officer Agent Thorne, hunting down an assassination plot against the President of the United States using actual spy tools like image analysis software, bullet trajectory mapping and modifying voice frequencies to intercept calls. It plays like a mix between an interactive movie and a forensic detective simulation. And it's the game you never knew you wanted and now probably can't stop thinking about. Well, hopefully. The reason Spycraft is still fascinating is its terrifying commitment to realism. It was developed with help of William Colby, the actual former director of the CIA, and Oleg Kalugin, a former KGB Major General. What's more, they actually even act in the game as themselves. You know, for that extra bit of yummy video gaming flavor. It's less of a game and more of a training simulation that was never officially endorsed by either agency, but still feels like it could have been smuggled out of Langley. If you ever wanted to feel like a real analyst rather than James Bond, so risk your sanity working on the case and not your height, this is the only game that actually respects your intelligence. I'm positive you may not remember or know of Microprocess's original Lightspeed, and by extension of that, its sequel Hyperspeed either. But you should, as it's surprisingly fun and unique game. It's a space exploration simulation where you pilot a ship to find a new home for humanity after the Earth has been rendered practically uninhabitable. You warp between star clusters, fight hostile aliens in real-time 3D battles reminiscent of Wing Commander, and harvest resources. So you know, it's kind of a Star Control-like game, but with its own unique flair. And while all of this is fun and all, the real meat of the game is the cross-species diplomacy. What makes Hyperspeed unique, even now, is that you just can't shoot everyone, spreading death and destruction throughout the galaxy. It's not a mindless shooter. You have to negotiate treaties with distinct alien races, each with their own personalities and politics. You might need to bribe a warrior race with weapons to get past their blockade, or trick a greedy merchant species. It's like Star Trek The Next Generation mixed with a shooter. The polygonal wireframe plus shading graphics also give it that retro-futuristic look that has aged surprisingly well. Okay, this one's pure chaos. Good, fun chaos mind you, but chaos nonetheless. The Horde is a hybrid strategy action game where you play as Chauncey, a farm boy slash manservant tasked with building up a village. To be precise, you save King Winthrop when he's choking during one of his feasts, and he rewards you with a patch of land called Shimto Plains. Potato tomato. The gameplay loop is split in two, a strategy phase where you plant crops, build walls and manage cows, and an action phase where red monsters called Hordlings rush in to eat your people and your cows. You have to run around with the magical Sword of Fate and chop them up before they destroy your settlement. Why play the Horde today? 2 words: Kirk Cameron. Well, it should be 3 really. Kirk Cameron and fun. That's actually 4. Never mind, you know what I mean. Anyway, the FMV cutscenes featuring the actor are delightfully cheesy in that peak 90s way we've all grown to love. But beyond the meme value, the game is genuinely stressful fun. The feeling of panic when your beautifully planned village is being chewed on by 50 red gremlins is unmatched. It's a frantic, slapstick tower defense game where, and I can't believe I'm saying it, you are the tower.
So Chauncey's been killed? Yes.
Don't let the simple graphics fool you, because unfortunately named Traffic Department 2192 is 2 things. The best example that the gameplay always trumps presentation, and also one of the best written games on DOS, period. You play as Marta Luis Velasquez, a pilot for the traffic police in a futuristic, war-torn city. Gameplay-wise, it's a top-down shooter where you drift your hovercar around corners and blow up gangs of vulture raiders. It looks like a standard arcade shooter, but that's misleading, as it's actually much, much more. The reason Traffic Department 2092 has a small perhaps, but still cult following is the story. It is dark, man. We're talking about script that rivals Blade Runner in tone, covering betrayal, drug abuse, political corruption and the horrors of war, all adapted for the shooter. The main character is angry, flawed and incredibly well realized. The script is often said to be tens of thousands of words long, some claim even up to 50,000. Let that sink in. It's a space opera tragedy disguised as a traffic cop simulator, and it hits way harder than it has any right to. If you ever come across it, do yourself a favor and check it out. We mentioned Dark Legions earlier as an unofficial spiritual sequel to Archon, but now we have to talk about the true 1994 remake Archon Ultra. This is, for the lack of a better descriptor, battle chess on steroids. It takes the classic concept, so light versus dark on a chessboard where pieces fight for the square, and updates it with aggressive 90s VGA graphics, digitized sound effects and a killer soundtrack. You have unicorns firing energy bolts, djinn throwing tornadoes and dragons breathing fire. Is it better than Dark Legions? It's different, and I believe that both are worth playing. Archon Ultra speeds up the original's formula significantly. The battles are even more hectic and action-packed, and by extension of that, more fun too. The addition of secondary weapons and special abilities adds a layer of depth that modern auto-battlers wish they had. Combat arenas now scroll and zoom, giving fights more dynamism than the static fields of the original. The aesthetics is just pure, distilled 1994 VGA cool because it looks like a heavy metal album cover but with more colors. It's arguably the definitive version of the Archon concept, but whether it or Dark Legions is better, I leave that decision to you. Nomad, also known as Project Nomad, is an open-ended space adventure from 1993 that was way ahead of its time. You start as a human on an exploration mission whose ship is actually rebuilt alien craft that crash-landed on Earth and had its navigation data wiped. You are rescued by an alien who's a member of the Galactic Alliance from whom you learn about the evil race of Korok, an ancient machine threat bent on wiping out life in the galaxy. Hearing all that, you decide to join the Alliance and help them against the Korok. From that moment onward, you're free to go about it in any way you see fit. So you get to explore star systems, trade goods, upgrade your ship and talk to some of the weirdest aliens ever put on a floppy disk. The magic of Nomad is this sense of mystery. Unlike Elite, which is all about the economy, Nomad is about conversation, exploration and lore. You travel across hundreds of star systems and encounter 11 alien races. And when you do, you have to ask the right questions to the right species to uncover the threat of the robotic Korok. The dialogue system is menu-driven but cleverly designed, making you feel like a genuine space detective. It's a lonely, beautiful and vast game that creates a sci-fi atmosphere comparable to Mass Effect, but years earlier with a fraction of its budget. Okay, we're gonna be walking a fine line with this one. That's also why I buried it so deep in this video. Knights of Zendar is a Japanese RPG with some, let's say, suggestive and, well, mature content, which for obvious reasons I'm not going to show here. It was localized for the West in 1995 and it's a turn-based combat game where your hero, Desmond, fights enemies in a classic JRPG style. It's a solid RPG with all the standard genre tropes, so leveling, gear and surprisingly sprawling world. But the plot? Well, the plot is the main attraction. Desmond is a young brush warrior who, after being robbed of his sword, armor and even clothes, sets out to reclaim his possessions, only to be drawn in a larger quest to battle demons and uncover his own true identity. Knights of Zendar is infamous for its humor, and Desmond you play as is, to put it lightly, a colossal perv. The game is a comedy first and RPG second, constantly breaking the fourth wall and making fun of fantasy tropes. While it features mature content here and there, the actual writing is genuinely funny in a slapstick teenage boy kind of a way. It's a bizarre time capsule of the 90s anime localization that you have to see to believe. Sometimes you just want to play something that will let you blow up your friends, and Triplane Turmoil is the best way to do it. What's more, it lets you do it in a traditional crowd around the keyboard and elbow fight way. This is a dogfighting game reminiscent of Sopwith but expanded for up to 4 players on a single PC. You pick a nation, take off from your runway and try to bomb the enemy base while dodging anti-aircraft fire and enemy planes in a multiplayer mayhem. Sure, it can be enjoyed against CPU too, but it's just not the same. It's been made with multiplayer in mind and it shows. The fun factor here is the multiplayer physics and how you can use it to your advantage. The planes invoke a stall mechanics, meaning if you climb too steep, you lose lift and drop like a rock. But you can also do it intentionally to work your way around your opponents and attack them from behind, or below, or above. I think you get what I mean. All this leads to hilarious moments where you try to do a cool maneuver, stall out and crash into your own hangar. It's fast, accessible and has a single-player campaign for each nation where fuel and ammo must be managed carefully. It's a perfect beer and pretzels couch game. Despite its title clearly claiming otherwise, Alien Logic is the weirdest game on this list, hands down. Released in 1994, it's based on the tabletop RPG Sky Realms of Jurune. The game blends exploration with a unique combat system where you whiff spells called daishas and wield weapons in real-time battles to defeat enemies. You begin as a human stranded on the alien world of Jurune, quickly drawn into its political conflicts and strange cultures, with the Friedel scholars guiding you through a history spanning thousands of years. The story revolves around survival, alliances and uncovering the mysteries of this bizarre planet. Why play Alien Logic today? Because there is nothing else like it. The world of Jurun is incredibly alien, mixing floating islands, bioorganic technology, and a culture that doesn't rely on standard fantasy tropes being its own unique thing. The learning curve is a vertical wall, I have to admit that, but once you figure out how to weave spells and navigate the warp, it offers an RPG experience that feels genuinely otherworldly and new. It's a forgotten masterpiece of world building that most ignored, either because of the other games that released around the same time, or because of how different it felt to any other games in the genre. Finally, we have Tough Guy, also known as Tough Guy Fighting Titans. Not a great title. But Street Fighter is not a genius level name for the game either, so I shouldn't really complain. It was released in 1995 by a Taiwanese studio, Panda Entertainment, which you may know for the iconic Sango Fighter games, and it too is a 2D fighting game that's basically a Street Fighter clone. You have a roster of 8 modern-day martial artists plus some bizarre bosses, including a Nazi villain. It also has smooth animations and an explosive set of special attacks. What most of the odd 11 people who had the chance to experience Tough Guy may not realize, it was actually a borderline revolutionary game when it comes to versus fighting tropes. It introduced a super move meter before it was a standard, but the real kicker is the healing mechanic. You can actually regenerate your health mid-fight while also charging the super meter, turning matches into a tug-of-war endurance tests. The animations are fluid, the sprites are huge and the AI is brutal, so it's best experienced against a friend. Or an enemy, it's even better against the enemy. It's an obscure fighter that plays surprisingly well if you're a fan of the genre. Let's start with something that was way ahead of its time. This is Sword of the Samurai by Microprose. Now, usually when you think of samurai game, you think of hacking and slashing. And yeah, there's plenty of that here, side-scrolling duels, top-down skirmishes, the likes, but that is only half of the story. Sword of the Samurai is basically a samurai simulator. You aren't just fighting, you're climbing the social ladder of feudal Japan. You have to manage land, recruit armies and, I'm not even kidding here, perform ritual tea ceremonies to impress your rivals. It's like The Sims, only with katanas, tactical battles and political intrigue. Sword of the Samurai seamlessly blends genres. One minute you're playing a strategy game, the next an action RPG and then a fighting title. The goal is to replace Oda Nobunaga and unite Japan under your rule. But the coolest mechanic is the legacy system. If you die or get too old, your son takes over, inheriting your honor and stats. It's brilliant, ambitious, and honestly, it did the honor system better than most modern games do today. Next up, we have the black sheep of the Wolfenstein 3D engine family, Corridor 7 Alien Invasion. While everyone was losing their minds over Doom, Capstone released this sci-fi horror shooter. You're a Special Forces agent sent into a top-secret research facility where, surprise surprise, in a tale as old as time in video game design, scientists opened an interdimensional portal called Vortex after messing with an alien artifact from Mars. And of course a bunch of hostile aliens came pouring through. If you were to count how many times this exact setup happened in video games, you wouldn't have enough fingers. Or is it just me, still using fingers to count? Corridor 7 is not just a Wolf 3D reskin, it actually pushed the engine harder than most of its peers. It added proximity mines, infrared and night vision visors for dark levels and transparent glass textures, which back in 1994 felt like sorcery for this aging tech. It was also infamous for its difficulty. Aliens didn't politely wait around, they spawned aggressively and kept you on the edge. If you want that pure, 90s maze shooter anxiety without the polish of its software, Corridor 7 is your jam. Just don't expect the level design to make much sense. Okay, I think it's time for a small dose of adrenaline. Have a nice day. And no, not you, it's actually the title. Come to think of it, you have it too. A day. Nice one, that is. Nobody ever really nailed down what NICE stands for, although there were guesses like Nitro Injection Car Enterprises, but who cares? You're here for the chaos and not well thought out acronyms. This is a racing game where you bolt guns onto futuristic cars and hurl yourself through loops and corkscrews at breakneck speed, turning the track into a war zone. The physics is what made Have a Nice Day special, floaty, arcadey and gloriously unpredictable. And if that sounds like complaints, they're not. I mean, it's fun in the best kind of Hot Wheels gone rogue way. Tracks are narrow, packed with jumps, vertical loops and corkscrews that make you feel like you're racing inside a toy set designed by a mad scientist. It's not a simulation, it's a demolition derby with a finish line. Perfect for those moments when you just want to hold the forward key and watch the world burn in techno-fueled mayhem. And now for one of the overlooked RPG heavy hitters. Umberstar is a German RPG battalion software and it's massive. Also fun. Let's not forget about fun. That's kinda important too. You start off at your parents' grave and get swept up in a quest to stop a powerful demon lord. That lord is Starboss, the god of chaos, who was banished to Larimer's third moon 1,000 years ago by 12 magicians wielding the Umberstar talisman. Now, the Black Sorcerer Marmion is performing a ritual to free him, and your mission is to reunite the 13 scattered fragments of the Umberstar before Tarboss can return and destroy the world. Umberstar uses a hybrid view, top-down for the world map and first-person grid-based movement for dungeons and cities. It's not the first time we've seen it, but it was surprisingly well made for 1992. One of the best features of Umberstar is definitely its atmosphere. Talion was famous for pushing the musical capabilities of the era, and the soundtrack here is the best example of that, moody and fantastic. It's also a part of a trilogy that was never fully finished, but Umberstar stands on its own as a deep, stat-heavy RPG that respects your intelligence. It doesn't hold your hand, it hands you a sword and pushes you into a dungeon to deal with it. If Descent and Doom had an accidental baby and then abandoned that baby in an asteroid field, because you know, Descent would not want to keep it claiming it's not Doom that was the father, and that she had no money or will to support it, then that said abandoned baby would become Radix Beyond the Void. Radix is a 2.5D shooter where you pilot an interdimensional starfighter through tight corridors, but unlike Descent where you can hover and spin until you throw up, Radix is all about speed. You are constantly pushed forward, which changes the feel of gameplay completely. The backdrop, while pretty generic, is rather fun. In the year 2147, humanity's colony ship was attacked by aliens emerging from the void, and you're sent in as a lone Radix pilot to infiltrate the bases and save the survivors. You're tearing through these alien biomechanical tunnels and blasting everything with some genuinely satisfying weapons. It also supported sloped floors in the engine, which was a huge technical flex back in 1995, even if it's something that you give no second thought today. It's a mindless explosive fun that makes you feel like an ace pilot without requiring a flight stick. Here's a weird one, Eternam. It's a mix of third-person graphic adventure with first-person 3D travel sections intertwined with plenty of cartoon animations. You play as Don Jones, a marshal of the United Forces of Orion who takes a vacation on the galaxy's best and most luxurious planet-sized fun park, Eternam. The twist? Your arch-nemesis, Mikhail Nuke, has taken over the park and it's all a trap. Dum-de-dum! I should have really edited in some kind of a menacing sounding drums and maniacal laugh here.
X-rays are without pity, you realize.
Eternam is a comedy adventure that feels like a fever dream. The navigation is first-person 3D, which looks crunchy by today's standards, but the interactions are these beautifully animated 2D cartoon vignettes that add charm to the story. Eternam was one of the earliest games to really lean into the CD-ROM format for voice acting and cutscenes. The dialogue is self-aware, tongue-in-cheek peppered with parodies and absurd jokes that keep it light-hearted, breaking the fourth wall constantly and offering quite a few chuckles. It's basically a sitcom, only trapped inside a DOS game.
Hello there.
Visuals of 1996 games were in a weird place. Some titles went all in on full 3D, others desperately tried to stick to tried and tested 2D solutions, and the even different ones were stuck somewhere in between, in the magical realm of 2.5D, where parts of their design were futuristic while the rest bungled either voxels or sprites. Sprites everywhere. Amok is the poster child for that weird time, a voxel showcase that sat right between the old sprite world and the polygonal future. You pilot a mech called Slumber, best name ever by the way, working for a mercenary group. In fact, the bureau that you work for sends you to sabotage both sides of the fragile peace, making sure that each faction blames the other so the war never truly ends. The gimmick here is the engine. It uses the aforementioned voxel technology, and instead of polygons, everything is built out of tiny 3D pixels. This allows for destructible environments and really smooth, organic looking at the time terrain. Because Amok looked like nothing else at the time, the voxel graphics gave it this hazy alien aesthetic that polygons just couldn't pull off. And the gameplay, despite being rather simple, go here, shoot that and whatnot, was quite fun. Especially that watching the ground deform and the buildings crumble as you stomp through them was oddly satisfying. After all that shooting, killing and demolitions, it's time for a video game palette cleanser. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you track. If you ever played Boulder Dash, you know the drill, cause it's basically the same game, only dressed up in 256 color DOS graphics and with a set of its own unique levels. You control your little digger, you burrow through dirt, you collect gems, and you try not to let rocks crash down on your head while gunning for the exit. It's just pure, unadulterated puzzle design. It starts easy, but by the later levels it turns into a Rube Goldberg machine of explosives, conveyor belts and lasers that just wait for you to make a single wrong step. It's not flashy, it doesn't have a deep story, but it has that just one more level addiction factor that will ruin your sleep schedule. Okay, buckle up, because this one is bizarre. Whale's Voyage. And no, it's not about marine biology. It's a sci-fi RPG with trading elements. So what some of us like the most. You start by scrapping together enough credits to buy a junky starter ship and try to survive. But the weirdness starts at the character creation. You don't roll dice, you literally splice DNA from parents to mutate your crew members, which is both unique and entertaining. Whale's Voyage is a Eurojunk masterpiece. It's a mix of trading simulation, first-person exploration and economic strategy. Is it polished? Hell no. Is it UI confusing beyond belief? Absolutely. But the sheer ambition of the game, managing the economy, the crew's genetics and the ship upgrades is truly fascinating. It's a game that begs you to break it. Min-maxing style. Before all those games based on comic books, like Arkham Asylum or Comic Zone, no idea how I've chosen the two being completely different, there was Noctropolis.
You're really cooking.
You play as a lonely bookstore owner who gets sucked into the world of his favorite comic book hero. You have to become the superhero Darkshire and fight Rogue's gallery of villains. The city itself is trapped in eternal night under a volcanic ash cloud, and your arrival coincides with the mass breakout of Darkshire's deadliest foes. This is an adult adventure game, not in a pornographic way mind you, but in a dark, gritty, 90s Spawn or Watchmen kind of a way. It uses digitized actors in FMV cutscenes, which usually looks cheesy, but here it actually fits the comic book aesthetic perfectly. Its atmosphere is thick, and it captures that mid-90s edgy comic book vibe better than almost any other game. If you love dark deco visuals and solving murders, this is a hidden gem. Now here's a game that is seriously overlooked despite being one of the most ambitious fantasy adventures of its time. Dragonlord The Legend Begins was Cryo's Interactive's attempt to fuse cinematic storytelling with first-person exploration, and while it didn't reach the mainstream heights, it carved out its own cult following. You play as Werner von Wallenroth, an orphan whose father was murdered by the Devil's Horseman Hagen von Yakanov. What a set of terrible names. When the hour of destiny arrives, Werner must step into a fractured kingdom, meet surreal characters, and prove himself worthy of joining the Dragon Knights. To succeed, he must win the votes of existing knights, balancing paths of violence, wisdom, or even bravery. The quest is equal parts personal revenge and epic struggle as he uncovers secrets, solve puzzles, and face the looming threat of destruction. Dragonlore is a snapshot of mid-90s ambition. Lush pre-rendered graphics, atmospheric music, and a world that feels alive even with its quirks. It's not a hardcore RPG, more of a narrative-driven adventure, but that just makes it more approachable. Yes, the navigation can feel clunky at times, and yes, some voice acting is delightfully cheesy, but that's part of the charm. If you want to experience Cryo's blueprint for cinematic adventures, or just see how fantasy storytelling was evolving on DOS, Dragonlore is worth your time.
Jaren has locked us out.
And finally, we have the game that shouldn't be on an overlooked list at all, but somehow it is. Lands of Lore: The Throne of Chaos. Made by Westwood Studios, the geniuses behind Command & Conquer series, this was their attempt to make the accessible dungeon crawler. And you know what? For the most part, they succeeded. The evil witch Scotia has acquired the Nether Mask, allowing her to shapeshift, and you have to stop her. Her dark army begins to spread across the Kingdom of Gladstone, forcing King Richard to send you on a quest to recover the Ruby of Truth, the only artifact that can expose her disguises and end her reign of chaos. So why would you want to play it today? Because it's one of the most polished RPGs of the DOS era, period. If you play the CD-ROM version, you get voice acting from Patrick Stewart. Yeah, the Captain Picard is narrating your adventure, which makes it instantly infinitely better. The art is vibrant, the UI is clean, and it doesn't require a degree in math or min-maxing frenzy to play. If you only play one game from this video, make it this one. First up, we're heading to the kitchen floor for DOSBox. Imagine a real-time strategy game with active pause where instead of tanks and marines you're commanding ants, spiders and roaches. Sounds fun, doesn't it? The story is a dramatic war between green and red insect armies fighting over the ultimate resource, food leftovers. You know, what your dog usually munches off the floor before you manage to get to it. You control specific units like the heavy-lifting beetle or the bomb-dropping wasp, trying to capture food items and secure flagged locations to win the map. It's frantic, surprisingly tactical, and absolutely adorable. The charm of DOSBox is undying. The game treats this tiny conflict with the gravity of World War II, complete with a stern commander giving you serious briefings and highlighting importance of particular objectives. It's still fun because it relies on rock, paper, scissors tactics, so each unit has its counter, and figuring out what works great against what is the key to success. DOSBox is unique because the maps are literal household messes. Spilled sodas, half-eaten burgers, dirty laundry and whatnot. It's one of the few RTS games where capturing a moldy stinky piece of cheese feels like a glorious military victory and not a toxic waste removal operation. Next, we have something cinematic: Siberia. You play as Zach, a hacker in dystopian 2027, charged with infiltrating a multinational secret base in Siberia to uncover Doomsday Weapon. It's a hybrid action-adventure game that's unlike anything else at the time. 1 minute you're walking through pre-rendered 3D hallways solving simple puzzles, and the next you're strapped into a turret or a jet-on-rails shooter sequences. It was heavily marketed on its quote-unquote next-gen graphics, using pre-rendered video to make everything look glossy and futuristic. And while this kind of presentation aged poorly today, the gameplay is still rock solid. Honestly, despite all its limitations and clunkiness, Siberia is a blast just for the atmosphere. It reeks of 90s cyberpunk, everything is chrome overdrawn in high contrast, there are blue lights everywhere, and it involves hacking too, which was a big subject back then. While the controls can be a bit stiff, the variety of gameplay keeps it fresh. You just never really do one thing for too long. Fun fact, Siberia was one of the first games to really push the limits of what a CD-ROM could do, packing in voice acting and video that blew people's minds. It even featured 2 decision points that could alter certain outcomes, which was unusual for such a linear FMV-heavy game. It was like playing a cheesy, high-budget sci-fi B-movie from the comfort of your keyboard. Let's switch gears to pure adrenaline pew-pew-pewer with Major Striker from the Shareware Legends at Apogee. It's a vertical scrolling shooter where you pilot a ship to save Earth from the alien Cretans. Just a couple letters away from cretins. Still, since they've invaded Earth and you're defending it, they are in fact rather silly because the chances of survival are virtually non-existent. Major Striker plays like the classic arcade shooters of the 80s. You fly up, shoot everything that moves, collect power-ups to turn your gun into a laser hose and rescue hostages. Its art direction is clean and colorful, so it's definitely not something to complain about. Sometimes you just want comfort food. You know, a big fatty burger covered in countless slices of crispy bacon, pizza packed with pepperoni to the brim, or even a bucket of spicy finger-licking chicken to take the edge off. And Major Striker is the grilled cheese of DOS shooters. Not too heavy, not too light, just perfect when you want to mindlessly let some steam off. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel, it just rolls really smooth within the genre's standard tropes. The soundtrack is catchy adrenaline-pumping MIDI and the triple fire power-up is undeniably satisfying. Not many people know this, but this was the first Apogee game to feature triple parallax scrolling, which adds a surprising amount of depth to the background layers. Major Striker is simple perhaps, but it's also fun, and that's the most important thing here. And now I have something for AD&D fans, Menzo Baranzan, and 1994 RPG from SSI and Dreamforge. Based on the Forgotten Realms setting, this game invites you to Underdark, the subterranean home of the Drow Elves. You create 2 characters and pick up NPCs along the way to rescue villagers kidnapped by the Drow Raiders. It plays like a first-person dungeon crawler, so you know, Eye of the Beholder or Ishar, but with a more open movement system and real-time combat where you furiously click to swing swords and cast fireballs. The big selling point here? Druid's Dourdan. Yeah, the legendary Drow Ranger is a recruitable party member, which was mind-blowing for fans of R.I. Salvatore's books. Not gonna lie, I've never heard of him, and it's just a curiosity I found online, but I'm just a silly voice behind these videos and I've not read all the fantasy books out there. Anyway, Menzo Baranzan is still fun today because it serves a very oppressive, alien-feeling atmosphere of the Underdark perfectly. Simply put, it makes you feel like you're really there. The mixture of high fantasy storytelling and that satisfying crunchy 90s RPG inventory management makes it a great nostalgia trip. Plus, you get to ride giant lizards as mounts, and you can't really beat that. Strap in for Inferno, a 1994 space combat simulation from Digital Image Design. This is actually a sequel to the game Epic, which I've covered in the past in a different series of videos, and the story here is rather wild. You play a pilot who was captured by the alien Rexon Empire and surgically altered to look like one of them. You escape, but now you're a human mind in an alien body out for revenge. The gameplay is fast, 360-degree space dogfighting with a heavy focus on clearing out massive space stations and planetary bases. It's frantic, disorienting, and very loud. And just the best thing ever if you had a bad day at work and wanna blast some alien ass. Inferno stands out because of its style. It has this gritty, mechanical aesthetic that looks totally different from the clean sci-fi of Star Wars shooter games from the same era. The combat is fun and exhilarating, and the soundtrack is a banger. It features music by the gothic rock band Alien Sex Fiend, which not only has a fantastic name but also gives the game this pulsating, dark energy you just don't get in other flight sims. It's pure, adrenaline-fueled 90s edge, especially in the cutscenes, and I think that you're going to love it. Here is a classic reborn, Lode Runner: The Legend Returns, released by Sierra in 1994. This is a puzzle platformer where you play as Jake Peril trying to steal gold from the Mad Monks. The mechanics are timeless and follow the original to the letter, so you can't jump, but you can blast holes in the ground to trap enemies or access lower levels. The plot is barely there, not that you need any, and you're basically intergalactic greedy thieves, yes, plural because you can play it with a friend, but the game takes you through wildly different worlds, from mossy jungles to spooky skeleton keeps, collecting loot and avoiding getting eaten. This is arguably the definitive version of the classic Lode Runner. The controls are snappy and the pixel art is vibrant and full of personality. I mean, just take a look at how the monks shrug when they fall into a hole. It's hilarious. But the real MVP here is the level editor. It was so easy to use that players spent hours making their own torture chambers for their friends. I know I did. For myself though, cause you know, no friends, just enemies. One nemesis and many, many, many enemies. Stronghold from 1993 by Stormfront Studios is a unique city builder set in Dungeons & Dragons universe. You are allowed tasked with building a settlement, but you have to attract different inhabitants like fighters, thieves, mages and clerics. You physically build their guild halls and homes to ensure they have place to settle in. The twist is that you have to manage the alignment of your city. Build too many thief dens and your city becomes chaotic, focus on low and lawful aligned units like paladins or other lawful classes show up. Stronghold was way ahead of its time because it's a city builder where the buildings actually determine the population's class and behavior. It's truly fascinating trying to balance a city where each guild is responsible for something else, for resources, security, gold, order and whatnot. What's more, your final major alignment determines your victory condition. The interface is a bit retro-clunky, but the core loop of managing a fantasy economy is incredibly addictive. It's a must-play for anyone who loves SimCity but wishes it had more elves, dwarves and halflings. Next is Entity, a at the time considered loot, sci-fi platformer developed by Lorisiels. You play a heroine who, let's be honest here, forgot her space armor and is wearing a tight latex bikini because of course that would work as well. Her goal is to save the planet from a mysterious entity that has broken loose. According to the intro, it escaped from a petrified state and is now preparing to wreak havoc across the world. The gameplay is a mix of running, gunning and platforming across exotic locales ranging from prehistoric to futuristic tech-heavy backdrops. Despite the questionable wardrobe choices, especially for 1993, Entity is actually a solid, even if quite challenging platformer. The visuals are the real hook here. The Entity uses a very distinct, clean art style that contrasts nicely with our heroine's lean physique. The game is fast, perhaps too fast, the music is catchy and the difficulty will definitely keep you awake. It's one of those Euro platformers that feels distinctively different from the Mario or Sonic clones of the time. Wolf is probably the weirdest but also the most fascinating game in today's video. This isn't your typical shooter, platformer, strategy or racer, it's a full-blown life simulation where you are the wolf. You pick from a timber or arctic wolf and drop straight into the wild. The goal is simple: survive. You have to hunt for food, find water, avoid hunters and manage your stamina. But the real meat of the game is the social hierarchy. You have to interact with other wolves, fight for dominance to become the alpha and eventually find a mate to raise pups. Sounds like fun? It is, but it's also really demanding. Rewarding too, but don't expect it to lead you by hand every step of the way. What makes Wolf special even now is how seriously it takes its subject matter. It was made in cooperation with Wolf Heaven International, so the behavior AI is not only surprisingly realistic for 1994, but also believable. I mean, I'm sure you'll find it incredibly chill to just roam the forest using your smell sense to track deer and avoid hunters that will risk at nothing to shoot you. It's a survival game before survival games were cool, complete with both open-ended explore mode and structured scenario missions, and it's as good today as it's ever been. It's time for something truly unique: Hired Guns by DMA Design, now known as Rockstar, famous for their GTA games. This is a sci-fi kind of a dungeon crawling RPG that features a 4-way split screen at all times. You control a squad of 4 mercenaries, chosen from a pool of 12 and sent to a planet called Graveyard to deal with genetically engineered creatures after responding to a fake rescue call. You move grid by grid in first person, but you can control each character independently, meaning you can send one guy to scout ahead, one to hold the door and the others to flank an enemy. It's tactical brilliance in a simple, easily digestible form. The atmosphere of Hired Guns is thick enough to cut with a knife. The sound of rain, the heavy mechanical doors and the terrifying monsters make it a tense experience. What's more, it's rather demanding and you quite literally should have eyes all around your head. You kinda can, since you can control all your mercs separately, but it requires management skills that not all of us have. The real magic, however, was the multiplayer. You could actually play it with friends, each controlling a quadrant of the screen. It was basically Left 4 Dead 15 years early and not laser focusing on zombies. The sheer depth of inventory and tactical options makes Hired Guns a masterpiece that was overshadowed simply because it was too complex. Now, this one's rather unique too, Magic of Endoria, a German 1994 strategy title. In this game, the gods have shattered themselves into crystal splinters and hidden underground, and it's your job as one of two rival archmages to recover them. You manage a guild of workers to dig tunnels, build rooms and set traps in subterranean layer. It's a mix of economic management and RTS combat. You aren't just building, you're researching spells and training or hiring warriors to fight off rival wizards. If this sounds familiar, it's because Magic of Endoria feels like a spiritual ancestor to Dungeon Keeper. Perhaps it's not as robust in features and balance, but it's still very, very fun. The loop of digging out the base and managing grumpy workers is incredibly satisfying. It's unique because it forces you to balance the same aspect of keeping your economy floating with a sudden need to defend your tunnels from invaders. It's a bit complex and clunky, but that ambition to mix digging, economy and real-time skirmishes is something we rarely see done this earnestly anymore. Finally, we end with a bang. Nova Storm, a 1994 rail shooter from the tech wizards at Psygnosis. If you know Psygnosis, you know this game looks good, and also you most likely had an Amiga at some point too, or first PlayStation, either or. Anyway, you pilot the Scavenger 4 against a rogue AI empire. The gameplay is strictly on rails. Your ship moves forward automatically through pre-rendered FMV environments and you just dodge obstacles and blast enemies. It's pure arcade action designed to show off what your expensive new PC could do, or what your cheap one couldn't. Potato tomato. Nova Storm is a visual feast. The FMV backgrounds transition seamlessly from lava planets to metallic cities, and the soundtrack is that pumping 90s techno/EDM that Psygnosis did better than anyone else. It's not a deep game, I mean you basically just pew 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 till you complete it, but it's a fantastic zone-out title, especially when you're stressed out. The DOS version of Nova Storm is actually preferred by many over the other parts because it kept the gameplay snappy and avoided the heavy FMV compression seen on early CD consoles like Sega CD. Let's start with Castles 2 Siege and Conquest. Longtime viewers of the channel have no doubt heard about it already, but those that didn't are in for a treat. This is a strategy game set in a semi-fictional medieval Brittany where you play one of 5 nobles fighting for the crown. But you don't just send armies to bonk people on the head on some random field in the middle of nowhere, you have to manage a delicate trifecta of administrative, military and political tasks too, represented by these anxiety-inducing little colored bars. You scout territories, harvest resources and physically design your castles wall by wall to withstand sieges, of which there will be plenty, all while sucking up to the Pope so he doesn't excommunicate you into oblivion. So why play Castles 2 today? Because it's the grandfather of grand strategy games like Crusader Kings, but with a much more intimate, hands-on feel. Designing a castle that actually holds off an army is incredibly satisfying, and the game's pacing is perfect, one more turn trap. Short of the turns, as it runs in real time. Oh, and if you manage to get your paws on the CD-ROM version, you'll be treated to a full documentary's worth of historical video clips about real castles hosted by a legitimate historian. It was basically the History Channel before the History Channel existed and way before it focused on aliens only. It's a joke, but it also kinda isn't. Next up is Nuki Boom, a platformer that screens Amiga port from every colorful pixel. And good, because it is. You play as little Nikki, whose grandfather has been kidnapped by the wicked Zoldren the Witch. So in order to save him, you have to navigate a beautifully animated fantasy world, solving light environmental puzzles and fighting enemies. But you're not packing a shotgun, laser rifle or a sword, none of that. Your primary weapon is seeds and apple cores. Yeah, you are literally throwing organic garbage at the fantasy creatures to save your family, so it's an eco-friendly distraction. Nikki Boom is still a blast because it nails that specific early 90s platformer vibe where the world feels magical and worth exploring, rather than just a distinct set of obstacles. The mechanics are surprisingly deep too. For instance, you can use locks to build bridges over gaps, adding a nice layer of puzzle solving to the hopping and bopping. It's also a quite difficult game, hiding a hardcore challenge behind its cutesy, storybook aesthetic. It's charming, it's vibrant, and it proves that heroes don't need swords, they just need a good throwing arm and some sick seat flicking skills. Next, we have one of the most fun racers before the 3D exploded on our flickering screens. Lamborghini American Challenge. This is essentially an upgraded re-release of Crazy Cars 3 with a shiny official Lamborghini license, and it's an illegal street racing game that spans the entire United States. You start with a basic Lambo and a wad of cash, racing against rivals on public highways while dodging traffic and outrunning the cops. It's not just about driving fast, it's also about managing your illegal career. So now buying upgrades, betting on races, paying off your speeding tickets and trying not to go bankrupt. What makes this game special today is the betting system. Before each race you can trash talk your opponents and bet money on the outcome. It adds this incredible layer of tension where you're not just racing for a trophy, you're racing because you literally bet the farm on beating a guy named Slick. Plus, the sensation of speed is fantastic for a sprite-based racer, to the point that it could rival the much better known Lotus games of the era. And the local split-screen multiplayer is still a chaotic joy. It's Need for Speed Underground before even the first Need for Speed existed. Now, let's talk about the humans. I mean, not you or I, the earlier humans. No, also not those from the 60s and 70s, or even the Middle Ages for that matter too. I mean prehistoric humans. And at the first glance at the game, you might think, oh, it's just a Lemmings clone. But if you do so, you'd be dead wrong. You control a tribe of prehistoric dudes who need to evolve by solving puzzles, discovering tools like fire and wheels, and occasionally dealing with dinosaurs. The twist is that unlike the mindless lemmings, you control these guys directly, switching between them to perform complex tasks like stacking on top of each other to form a human ladders or tossing spears across chasms. The humans still hold up because the puzzle design is genuinely clever and often hilarious. There is something slapstick about watching your tribe clumsily invent the wheel or accidentally set themselves on fire. It requires more tactical thinking than lemmings because your resources, the humans, are finite and valuable, but it's also not as frantic. The Atari Jaguar version was rebranded as Evolution Dino Dudes, and the one that landed on Atari Lynx, Dino Olympics, and both might be the most 90s marketing name changes in history. Whatever you call it though, it's a puzzle game with a lot of distinct personality. Okay, we're cheating this time slightly with a Windows 95 and not a DOS release, but critical mass is too weird to ignore and I was looking for a video I could stick it in for months. So one about games that were great but also overshadowed by giants seems more than appropriate. It's a shareware gem by Sean O'Connor that looks like a rotating upside-down Galaga but plays like a turn-based tactical nightmare. Or a dream, you know, depending who you are as a gamer. You're a squadron commander, but you don't twitch fly your ship. Instead, the game pauses each turn, you issue orders to your wingman and set your ship's speed and trajectory, and then watch a few seconds of chaotic real-time action play out before it pauses again. And believe you me, it may look simple, but it's fun freaking-tastic. This stop-and-go dogfighting of critical mass sounds insane, but it creates this incredible tense tactical loop where you're constantly trying to predict where the enemy missiles will be in 3 seconds, where to shoot and where not to go. It's like playing chess, but the pawns are exploding space fighters moving at Mach 2, or Warp 5, potato tomato. It's a unique genre mashup that we barely see anymore, a strategy game disguised as an arcade shooter. And yes, there are 30 different mission types, which is wild for a tiny mid-90s shareware title. If you missed this in the shareware era, you missed one of the most stressful yet rewarding tactical experiences on the PC. Let's step into the ring with the best of the best championship karate. Yes, karate, not karate. Anyway, despite the title clearly trying to ride the popularity of the Eric Roberts movie, it's actually a serious simulation built on the same engine and design philosophy as the earlier Amiga game Panzer Kickboxing. It's not a button masher like Street Fighter, so don't expect automatic combos or explosive super attacks. You have to train your fighter in a gym minigame to improve stats like strength and resistance, and when you fight, it's all about technique, stamina and conditioning. And never only about simple health bars. Best of the Best is still fascinating because it treats fighting as a sport, not a fantasy. If you don't train your fighter and practice yourself, you will get knocked out. The animation is fluid, giving the kicks and punches a realistic weight that was rare for 1992. It captures the rhythm of a real match, prodding with jabs, managing distance and waiting for that one opening. It's a brutal technical fighter that demands respect. And honestly, the gym training montage is almost as addictive as the actual fighting. From the legendary Bitmap brothers comes Magic Pockets, another of the games known from the Amiga. You played the Bitmap Kid, a cool 90s dude that wears sunglasses indoors, you know, like you do, and owns a pair of trousers with infinite storage space. The story? Creatures stole your toys. The solution? Dive into your own pockets and beat them up using whirlwinds, bubbles and other random stuff, depending on the level. It's got that signature Bitmap Brothers metallic art style, but remixed into something weirdly cute and candy-colored. Magic Pockets is worth a replay for the style alone. The intro track is a digitized version of Betty Boop's Doing the Do, which is an absolute banger of a nostalgia trip. And the gameplay is unique because of the projectile mechanics. You can actually charge up your shots to trap enemies in bubbles and then pop them for sweets. It feels slick, cool and undeniably British. Not many people know, but the game was originally played on a kids TV show called Motormouth, where callers would shout instructions at the screen to win prizes. Now for something truly massive, Birds of Prey. In 1992, flight simulations were usually about flying one specific plane. Birds of Prey looked at that and said, I want to fly all of them. Or at least, that's how I imagine it. It features 40 different flyable aircraft, from the F-16 to the massive B-52 bomber and even a Boeing 747. Yup, any craft you could think of back then, chances are it's in the game. You participate in a fictional NATO versus Warsaw Pact conflict on a map that was absolutely gigantic for the time. I'd like to apologize for a bit timid and not action-packed gameplay footage, but I couldn't find anything better online. And I'm shite at the game today too, so recording it myself would end up being even worse. The sheer ambition of Birds of Prey is staggering. It contained a surprisingly bold flight model, a dynamic campaign and even carrier landings. And it's still fun because of that sandbox freedom. In one mission you're dogfighting in a MiG-29 and the next you're trying to land a jumbo jet on a runway while under fire. It's a technical marvel that proves optimization used to be an art form, and overcoming technical limitations was a breeding ground for creativity. If I remember correctly, the footage from Birds of Prey's intro, albeit on the Amiga, was also used in the opening of Joystick, a TV show centered around games and gaming in the early 90s back here in Poland. Let's get obscure with the Cool Croc twins. I mean, there are, but everything I just said was pure cringe, so sorry for that. This is an arcade platformer where you play as Punk and Funk, two crocodiles trying to win the heart of a croc girl named Daisy. The gameplay loop is incredibly distinct. You don't just reach the exit, you have to bump your head into the light bulbs 3 times to light them up completely. Once all the bulbs are lit, the exit opens. It may sound simple, but the level design is truly fiendish. The Cool Croc Twins is a hidden gem because of its competitive 2-player mode. You're sharing the screen, stealing bulb hits from each other and generally being a nuisance. It's got that easy to learn, impossible to master arcade quality, and you're going to love it. Also, the movement is unique. You stick to walls and ceilings, flipping gravity instead of jumping, spinning around the blocks in a way that can make you dizzy if you're not careful. It's a colorful, tiny bit frustrating, delightful little puzzle platformer that deserves way more love than it ever got. With a name like Epic, this game better deliver. And while it's perhaps not the best game out of today's video, it sure tried its hardest and is really fun. Developed by Digital Image Design, this was a 3D space opera that felt like a legally distinct Battlestar Galactica. You're piloting a fighter to protect a human fleet escaping a supernova battling the evil Rexons. The graphics were a mix of polygons and bitmaps that looked mind-blowing in 1992, creating a sense of scale that was rare for the era. Epic stands out today for its atmosphere even more than for its fun gameplay. The soundtrack may not be orchestral in the literal sense, but it absolutely pretends it is, blasting out this huge cinematic energy that matches the game's title, giving all the space battles you'll be a part of a truly grandiose feeling. The missions are tight, timed and tense. It's not a simulator, it's an action movie in space where you're the main hero and where the fate of humanity rests on your shoulders. The cutscenes, the music and the desperation of the fleet's journey make it a cinematic experience that really pushes the cool factor of the early 3D gaming. Here's Elf, not to be confused with the Will Ferrell movie, which was pretty fun too. But here, you're Cornelius, the boyfriend of the year, trying to save your girlfriend Elisa from the villainous Nekrylos. It's a quirky action-adventure game from Ocean Software where you explore, collect pets, pets, and trade herbs for upgrades. But the real hook is the morality system. The game actually judges you based on who you kill and who you spare, giving you a rating that affects the ending. Yeah, all of that in a platformer. Elf is special because it's so weirdly ambitious. It's an open-ended platformer where you can buy a flying machine or talk to NPCs. It has a very specific British humor to it too. In fact, if you tried to pirate the game back in the day, the copy protection screen famously threatened you that your knob will fall off, which is just all kinds of cool. Well, not the falling off part, I suspect that would be both painful and devastating, but the creativity. Yep, the devs definitely didn't lack it. You just don't get those kinds of ideas anymore. It's a bizarre, funny and surprisingly deep adventure that doesn't hold your hand. And finally, we have Cannon Fodder, another of those ignored on PC but ultra popular on the Amiga titles. Its tagline was, "War has never been so much fun," but the game was a brilliant, satirical Trojan horse. You control a squad of tiny soldiers with a mouse, guiding them through jungles and snowfields to shoot enemies and blow up buildings. Mechanics-wise, it's an action strategy shoot-em-ups blending fast-paced combat with squad tactics. During certain missions, you'll need to split your team, flank enemies and be careful with your limited explosives. But the reason Cannon Fodder is a masterpiece, other than its hella addictive gameplay, is the emotional weight it hides. Every soldier has a name. When Jules or Jupes, your initial recruits, dies, they don't respawn. They get a tiny white cross on the hill at the main menu. And as you play, that hill fills up with graves of the men you led to their deaths. It's a sobering, anti-war statement wrapped in a fun, addictive shooter. It's effortless to play, impossibly hard to master, and it sticks with you long after you turn off the computer. It's hands down one of the best games of the early 90s. If you loved uncovering these overlooked classics, hit that like button and join me for more lost treasures waiting to be rediscovered.